Hey truckers, today we're seeing part 24 of Reincarnation of the Businesswoman at School. Let's dive into the video. Gu Ning thought for a while, then agreed. With Gu Ning's permission, Lin Xiaoting couldn't wait a second longer and opened the car door at once. Although the space in the car was quite small and their movements were limited, it was unusually exciting. Lin Xiaoting hugged Gu Ning in his arms and let her sit on his legs. They stared at each other with burning desire in the moonlight. Everything looked so beautiful tonight. Gu Ning couldn't move her eyes away from his handsome face. His delicate features, especially the faint smile on his sensual mouth, attracted her full attention. Every time she saw him, she was stunned by his striking appearance. "What? You can't move your eyes away from me?" He smiled, which was so charming. Lin Xiaoting seldom smiled, but Gu Ning was even more attracted to him once he smiled at her. "Yeah, you're stunning," Gu Ning said with a smile. Hearing that, Lin Xiaoting got excited and kissed her without hesitation. CHCK for US to rise on no/v/l/bin.c0m. To the world, she might just be a normal human being, but in his eyes, she was his entire world. Lin Lijuan wandered on the street after she ran out of the Lin family's house. She didn't have her phone with her, nor money, and she had no idea where she was right now. She just walked and walked along the street. Seeing the sky becoming darker, Lin Dekheng was slightly worried that Lin Lijuan was still out. He called Lin Lijuan in the end, but her phone rang in the house. She doesn't have her phone, or money. Will she be safe? Zhang Meiyu was worried too. Although they had conflicts, they were a family after all. Lin Dekheng thought for a while, then said to Lin Yuehao, go out to find your aunt. Lin Yuehao didn't want to, but had to listen to his father. However, in the end, Lin Yuehao searched for Lin Lijuan for nearly 2 hours, but it was in vain, so he gave up and went back home. City F was a large city, so it was very difficult to find a person on the streets. Lin Dekheng didn't know what else he could do. He thought that Lin Lijuan was an adult and she could take care of herself, so he went to bed as usual. In the clubhouse, Zhao Xiaoxian and her friend were about to leave around 12 a.m. She seemed to be in a good mood after satisfying her sexual needs, and she completely forgot about Lin Tianyu. However, once she walked out, she noticed Yuzi, and her good mood was instantly replaced by anger and jealousy. Without delay, Zhao Xiaoxian ran to Yuzi. "Hey, Xiaoxian, where are you going?" Zhao Xiaoxuan's friend asked, but she soon realized what was going on when she saw Yuzi not far away. Yuzi just had a party with Chao Wenxin and their friends. They had already walked to an elevator, but Yuzi left her phone in the private room, so she walked back to fetch it. "Yuzi, stop right there." Zhao Xiaoxian dashed ahead and stood in Yuzi's way. Seeing Zhao Xiaoxian, Yuzi's good mood was ruined at once. "What? Did Lin Tianyu call you or find you?" Zhao Xiaoxian asked, but she believed that Lin Tianyu must have contacted Yuzi behind her back. Yuzi was struck dumb for a second, because she had already broken up with Lin Tianyu for a long time. "Zhao Xiaoxian, what's wrong with you?" "I've broken up with Lin Tianyu for a long time. Why would he call or find me?" Yuzi said. "Really?" Zhao Xiaoxian didn't believe it. "Whatever." Yuzi ignored Zhao Xiaoxian and walked away. Zhao Xiaoxian, however, remembered the news she had read today, and her jealousy of Yuzi got the better of her. She was afraid that Yuzi would steal Lin Tianyu from her once she became rich. Thinking of that, Zhao Xiaoxian felt a strong sense of crisis and pulled Yuzi back. "You can't leave. What do you want?" Yuzi was annoyed. Zhao Xiaoxuan's face was twisted in jealousy. "Yuzi, I didn't expect that you would be so successful now. You became a boss after being a poor girl all within a few days. Yuzi was a shareholder of Charm, so she was the boss of it to some extent. Yuzi wasn't surprised that Zhao Xiaoxian had already heard of the news. It's none of your business. It is my business. Tianyu and I argued precisely because of you. Zhao Xiaoxian shouted in anger. Yuzi actually had no interest in their relationship. Is it my fault that you argued with each other? Yuzi couldn't understand why Zhao Xiaoxian wouldn't let her go. You're successful now, so you attract Tianyu's attention, Zhao Xiaoxian said. I'm sorry. I seriously don't understand why you are blaming me for everything. It's not my fault. Yuzi argued. Lin Tianyu was a terrible man, but Zhao Xiaoxian cherished him very much. Yes, it is your fault. If you were as poor as always, Tianyu wouldn't pay any attention to you. Zhao Xiaoxian almost shouted. It's completely ridiculous that you argued with each other just because I'm successful now. Does it mean that you should disappear too if I dislike you? Yuzi said. She was unwilling to carry the responsibility. Although she had been a poor girl, while Zhao Xiaoxian was born in a rich family, she was a successful designer now and she also had Guning's support. She wouldn't take advantage of others, but she wasn't weak anymore. Zhao Xiaoxian, however, lost control of herself. Bitch, how dare you talk to me like that? Saying that, she raised her hand trying to slap Yuzi. Yuzi moved away at once, but Zhao Xiaoxian's hand still hit her face. Luckily, Zhao Xiaoxian had drunk a lot of alcohol, so she wasn't able to use her full strength. It wasn't painful, but Yuzi was in a rage. Without hesitation, Yuzi used her full strength to slap Zhao Xiaoxian across the face. Zhao Xiaoxian shouted because of the pain. Yuzi hadn't drunk much, so she was able to slap Zhao Xiaoxian hard, and Zhao Xiaoxian fell towards the nearby wall at once. However, thanks to the wall, she didn't fall on the floor. Xiaoxian! Zhao Xiaoxian's friend was watching the scene from the side just then, but now ran over in a hurry after seeing Zhao Xiaoxian being hit by Yuzi. Yuzi snorted and walked away, but was stopped by the woman. How dare you, Yuzi! She raised her hand, trying to get revenge for Zhao Xiaoxian. Before Yuzi could fight back this time, the woman's wrist was caught by another person. The woman was mad, and abruptly turned around to look at the person who grabbed her wrist. When she was about to swear at the person, she recognized the person. She became scared the second she recognized the person's face. Me Miss Chao. The person who caught her wrist was precisely Chao Wenxin. Chao Wenxin came back after Yuzi had been gone for a long time, but she saw the women try to slap Yuzi right as she walked near. Well, how dare you do that? Chao Wenxin stared at the women. The woman didn't know what to say all of a sudden. New tirais at n/vel/b/i/n.co. She slapped me. Zhao Xiaoxian didn't recognize Chao Wenxin, so she wasn't scared of her. Seeing Chao Wenxin helping Yuzi, Zhao Xiaoxian became angrier. Oh, then you must have annoyed her beforehand, Chao Wenxin sneered, because she believed that Yuzi wouldn't hit someone for no reason. Zhao Xiaoxian panicked a little, then lied. She seduced my boyfriend. Xiaoxian, Zhao Xiaoxian's friend, wanted to stop her, but it was too late. Chao Wenxin was born in a super-rich dominant family in City B, and their families were hardly comparable to hers. In Chao Wenxin's eyes, they were merely nobodies. Yuzi, did you seduce her boyfriend? Chao Wenxin asked Yuzi, but sounded like she had just heard a funny joke. Of course not. Yuzi denied it. I know that I'm bad at choosing the right man, but I'll never accept such a snobbish and terrible man. Yuzi felt disgusted upon thinking of Lin Tianyu now, and it was impossible that she would accept him again, let alone seduce him. Did you hear that? Chao Wenxin looked at Zhao Xiaoxian like she was a clown. Chao Wenxin then let Zhao Xiaoxian go and walked away with Yu Zi. How can you? Zhao Xiaoxian was unwilling to give up. However, before she could finish her sentence, her friend stopped her at once. Xiaoxian, that woman isn't someone you can mess with. Hearing that, Zhao Xiaoxian was shocked. Who is she? Zhao Xiaoxian only dared to bully someone who was poorer or weaker than her. In fact, her friend's family was much richer than her. If her friend didn't dare to annoy the woman must come from a super rich or powerful family. She was born in the Chao family, Zhao Xiaoxuan's friend said. What? The Chao family? Which Chao family? Zhao Xiaoxian asked with astonishment. She had only heard of the Chao family in high society. However, Zhao Xiaoxian refused to believe that Yu Zi was able to make friends with a member of the Chao family. It would be a great honor for them if they had a chance to be Miss Chao's friends. Zhao Xiaoxuan's friend sneered, how many Chao families are there in City B? She was born in the Chao family, which has an alliance with the Tang family in City B. What? Zhao Xiaoxian was scared and shocked. Even though she already had the answer, she couldn't accept it. She couldn't accept the fact that Yu Zi was superior to her now. You better stay away from Yu Zi the next time you see her, otherwise you'll be in big trouble, Zhao Xiaoxuan's friend said out of kindness. If they didn't want to cause their families any trouble, they had to learn not to mess with someone who was much richer or more powerful than them. When Zhao Xiaoxuan's friend met Chao Wenxin for the first time, it wasn't a pleasant experience, but she bore in mind that Chao Wenxin wasn't someone she could mess with ever since. Zhao Xiaoxian remained silent, but she was still unwilling to accept it. Zhao Xiaoxuan's friend had already said and done what she could. If Zhao Xiaoxian still wanted to dig her own grave, nobody could stop her. I have an appointment with several sexy young men. Wanna go with me? Zhao Xiaoxuan's friend asked her. Zhao Xiaoxian gave her a side glance with disdain. No, I want to go home now. Gu Ning received Tang Haifeng's call at 7 a.m. the next morning. She heard a piece of bad news from him. Xiang Dongping died of suffocation because his oxygen mask had fallen off in the middle of the night, however it wasn't noticed until this morning. Gu Ning wasn't surprised, and the first thought she had in her mind was that the mastermind behind the car crash must have killed Xiang Dongping to prevent Xiang Dongping from betraying him. Either way, Gu Ning didn't have any sympathy for Xiang Dongping because he had tried to murder Tang Haifeng. In addition, Gu Ning had no intention to force Xiang Dongping to tell her the truth, so it wouldn't affect her plan even if he was dead now. They were going to find out who the person behind Tang Deming was, not Tang Deming. It was obvious that Tang Deming was just the person's shield, and it was hard to find out who the person was unless Tang Deming told them himself. However, it wasn't likely that Tang Deming would do that. That being the case, they couldn't take action to punish Tang Deming right now, in case the person behind his back would be alerted. After eating breakfast, Gu Ning went to the Tang family's house along with Gu Man as usual. When Yu Zi arrived at the shopping mall at 9 a.m., Lin Tianyu stopped her at the door. Seeing Lin Tianyu, Yu Zi felt disgusted. Yu Zi, can we talk? Lin Tianyu asked. No, Yu Zi said without hesitation. She didn't think that there was anything she needed to talk to Lin Tianyu about. Lin Tianyu, however, didn't feel embarrassed at all. Yu Zi, I'm still in love with you. Can we get back together? No, no. Yu Zi rejected again. Lin Tianyu, please leave me alone, thanks. After that, Yu Zi tried to walk away, but was stopped by him again. Lin Tianyu, get out of my way. Yu Zi stared at Lin Tianyu with a cold face. Yu Zi, I was forced to be with Zhao Xiaoxian, and I already broke up with her. As long as you're willing to forgive me, I'll treat you well for the rest of my life. I promise, Lin Tianyu said, and seemed petty and low for the first time in front of a woman. Although Lin Tianyu did it for his own benefits, he indeed still loved Yuzi, so he sounded sincere when he said that. However, Yuzi still only felt disgusted. Lin Tianyu, both you and I clearly know why you dumped me, Yuzi sneered. Didn't you dump me because Zhao Xiaoshuan's family is rich? You thought that I was too poor to be your girlfriend, and you came back to me right now just because I'm the designer and a shareholder of Charm. You simply want to make use of me for your family's good. Yuzi wouldn't be deceived by this terrible man anymore. Hearing that, Lin Tianyu panicked, but still made up an excuse. I won't deny it, but please believe me, I still love you. It's all my mother's fault. You know that my mother is a snobbish person and she would only accept a properly matched marriage. I did stand up to her, but she used her life to threaten me. I had to listen to her, because she's my mother after all, but she will allow us to be together now. Yuzi let him finish, but still ignored him. Only an idiot would believe that bullshit, Yuzi thought to herself. She made up her mind not to forgive him. She had her own principles, and she wouldn't tolerate betrayal. A good woman never backtracks. Yuzi. Seeing Yuzi walking away, Lin Tianyu pulled her back, but Yuzi got rid of his hand with great force. Don't touch me. You're so disgusting. Yuzi's angry loud voice attracted a lot of attention from people around them. Lin Tianyu changed his expression. Yuzi, why must you be so cold-blooded? Lin Tianyu said, like he was the victim. Yuzi? Is she the designer of Charm? I think she is. Why is the man saying that she's cold-blooded? What has happened? Onlookers discussed it. I am cold-blooded? Are you insane? Why Yuzi argued, but Lin Tianyu interrupted her. I know that you're successful now, and that you think that I'm not capable of being your boyfriend, so you want to dump me, right? Lin Tianyu said with a sad face, like he felt so hurt. What? Yuzi is successful now, so she wants to dump her boyfriend? She's so cold-blooded. Check out LTSTVL on novl/bin.cm. How can she do that? Although she's famous now, I don't like her. Me either. Hearing people's discussion, Yuzi panicked, because she was afraid that this rumor might affect the reputation of Charm. Lin Tianyu, we've broken up for a long time, Yuzi tried to argue against him, but she was interrupted by Lin Tianyu again. Yuzi, I promise that I'll treat you well for the rest of my life. Please give me a chance, Lin Tianyu said. It was obvious that Lin Tianyu was forcing Yuzi to yield to his request by making full use of the onlookers' attention. Really? Someone questioned Lin Tianyu. It wasn't Yuzi, but Zhao Xiaoxian who just arrived here. Zhao Xiaoxian had a premonition that Lin Tianyu would come to Yuzi, so she came here to have a look. To her surprise, Lin Tianyu was begging Yuzi to forgive him in a public place. Besides, Lin Tianyu had never made that promise to her. Hearing Zhao Xiaoshuan's voice, Lin Tianyu frowned. Zhao Xiaoxian was the last person he wanted to see right now. Lin Tianyu, you did come here trying to get her back. No wonder you refused to swear an oath of loyalty to me yesterday. You even abandoned me alone at the airport. Zhao Xiaoxian criticized him, feeling very hurt. This reversal shocked those onlookers. In the beginning, they believed that it was Yuzi's fault because she wanted to dump her boyfriend once she was successful. However, it turned out that the woman who came later was this man's girlfriend. In addition, from the woman's complaint, they got to know that this man had abandoned his girlfriend alone at the airport yesterday, then came to beg Yuzi to forgive him. Everything was clear now. Yuzi was this man's ex-girlfriend. If this man still loved Yuzi like he claimed, why was he still dating another woman? Did he want to get Yuzi back just because Yuzi became a famous designer now? Thinking of that, those onlookers looked at Lin Tianyu with obvious disdain. Lin Tianyu felt embarrassed amid people's accusatory looks, so he snapped at Zhao Xiaoxian. Zhao Xiaoxian, we've already broken up with each other, and you said so yourself. Stop acting like I've betrayed you. Lin Tianyu was humiliating Zhao Xiaoxian without hesitation. Zhao Xiaoxian became angry. Although she had said that herself, she didn't actually mean it. Lin Tianyu, do you really want to break up with me? Zhao Xiaoxian asked. It's not that I want to break up with you, but we've already broken up. Don't put it like I've abandoned you. It'll damage my reputation, Lin Tianyu said. Okay, very well. Zhao Xiaoxian was heartbroken now. Lin Tianyu, how could you do this to me? At this moment, she suddenly realized that he only loved Yuzi. It didn't matter how much she had done for him during the past few years. She always thought that they would be together forever because they were born in families of equal social status. However, she was wrong. Maybe it was time for her to give up. Although she loved Lin Tianyu very much, she felt very tired being in a relationship with him. Great, Lin Tianyu, we officially broke up now. Zhao Xiaoxian gave up this time even if she was reluctant to do so. She was selfish and self-centered, but not dumb. Given what Lin Tianyu had done, there was no need for her to get him back. Lin Tianyu agreed in silence. Oh, by the way, do you believe that Yuzi would be willing to be your girlfriend again? In your dream. She's so successful now, and it's very easy for her to find a much better man than you. You're merely a snobbish, terrible man without any sense of loyalty. Zhao Xiaoxian said, then turned around walking away without hesitation. What Zhao Xiaoxian had said threw a bomb among the crowd. A snobbish, terrible man without any sense of loyalty? Is this man used to cheating on his partner? I believe so, because his girlfriend just said that. Well, does it mean that he slept with that woman when he was with Yuzi? Shut up! Lin Tianyu shouted at the crowd. Those onlookers closed their mouths at once. When he turned to find Yuzi, Yuzi was already gone. He knew that Yuzi went to work in her store, but he felt too ashamed now to meet her in the store. When Yuzi walked into her store, there were many customers inside. They all came here after watching the release conference of Charm. However, there were only 10 gowns which the models had put on for the runway show in the store for easy reference. Yuzi had some other gowns left undone, so she couldn't show them right now. Therefore, customers could only book for customized gowns today. In fact, those customers preferred customized gowns too, because they could afford it. Updates tnvel/buy.com. Gu Man went upstairs to spend some time with Tang Yinfan when they arrived at the Tang family's house, because Tang Yinfan couldn't often show up in the living room in case someone else saw him. Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting stayed in the living room watching TV along with Tang Jiakai. Today was Sunday, so Tang Jiakai didn't go to school. He planned to hang out with his friends in the beginning, but gave up since Gu Ning came, especially with a man. He asked Gu Ning who this man was. Gu Ning told him that he was her boyfriend. Tang Jiakai tried to chat with Leng Xiaoting, but Leng Xiaoting seemed unwilling to talk with him. Ning, don't you feel bored seeing that he's so quiet? Tang Jiakai approached Gu Ning and asked in a low voice. Even though his voice was low, Leng Xiaoting was still able to hear it, and he frowned. Gu Ning gave Leng Xiaoting a glance. Seeing that he was upset, Gu Ning was amused, and said on purpose, "Yeah, a little." Hearing that, Lin Xiaoting felt aggrieved looking at Gu Ning, because she had said something different to him before. Since you feel bored, why are you staying with him? Tang Jiakai asked worriedly. Ha ha. Gu Ning laughed a little. I like how we get along with each other. Fine. Since Gu Ning said so, Tang Jiakai didn't say anything further. He had no right to interfere in her private affairs after all. At this moment, Gu Ning's phone rang, and the caller was her principal. Gu Ning didn't avoid them and answered the call at once. Hi. Hi, Gu Ning, there is a national math competition for high school students in 2 weeks. It'll be held on Saturday at City B University. Every province will send 3 high school students to take part in it. You're a well-known, excellent student in our school, and I hoped that you could join in on behalf of our city. If you can win any of the top 3 prizes, I'll allow you to skip all the classes and monthly tests till the day of the National College Entrance Examination. How about it? The principal asked. Sure. Gu Ning agreed without hesitation, because it was a win-win if she could win a prize in the competition. All of a sudden, she asked, well, I'm not sure whether I can win a prize. If I can't, will you force me to go back to attend classes? Although Gu Ning was confident about herself, she wasn't certain that she could win a prize. After all, the contestants were all excellent high school students who came from every province around the country. One could never be too careful, so Gu Ning couldn't make any promises. Of course I won't, the principal said. He knew that Gu Ning would reject if he said he would. Glad to hear that. Gu Ning was relieved. Great, then I'll send you the phone number of the teacher who will lead the team to join in the competition, the principal said. No problem. Gu Ning replied. Oh, by the way, the principal added. Gu Ning, you're the pride of our school now. I wish you well and luck in your career. Do you know that principals in other high schools all want to poach you from our school, but I'll never allow it to happen, haha. Hearing that, Gu Ning was amused. Well, I'm honored that our school is proud of me, and I'll never leave our school to join another high school, Gu Ning said. She was about to attend college, so she had no interest in other high schools. Great! The principal was thrilled to hear that. Ning Ning, what prize are you going to win? Tang Jiakai asked when Gu Ning ended the call. There is a national math competition in City B University on Saturday in 2 weeks, and our principal wants me to participate in it on behalf of our school, Gu Ning said. Math competition? Are you good at math? Tang Jiakai was surprised. Gu Ning wore a confident smile. I'm good at every subject. Gu Ning wasn't bragging, but just told the truth. It was hard to find such an outstanding high school student who was good at every subject around the country. Tang Jiakai said with admiration, I feel so ashamed now that you're better than me in every aspect. Gu Ning laughed. You can still protect me as my older cousin. Although Lin Xiaoting knew that Gu Ning and Tang Jiakai were cousins, he still felt upset when Gu Ning said that. However, he didn't show it on his face. No problem. Tang Jiakai was cheered up. All right, if what we went through at the Earth nightclub happens again, you have to protect me well. Gu Ning said on purpose to scare Tang Jiakai. Tang Jiakai's smile froze on his face at once. What they had been through at the Earth nightclub still left him in horror. Roar. Well, I don't think I can, Tang Jiakai said. Normal people wouldn't be safe in such a dangerous situation, Gu Ning was an exception. It wasn't shameful to admit that. In City F, Gu Qing received the skincare products sent by Colleen and called Gu Man to tell her. Gu Man then walked downstairs to tell Gu Ning. Ning Ning, your aunt told me that she plans to open the salon the day after tomorrow, so I want to go back tomorrow, Gu Man said. The most up-to-date NVELs are published on n0velgen.co/m. Sure, but I can't go back with you because I still need to deal with something here. I'll send Xiaoya to fly back with you, Gu Ning said. The Tang family would be going through a big change these days, so she had to stay alert since both Tang Haifeng and Tang Yunfan had to lie in bed. Although the Tang family was powerful enough to defeat their enemy, she wanted to help as a member of the Tang family. She couldn't promise that she would solve every problem for them, but she would do her best to help them overcome the crisis. If she hadn't been in City B this time, Tang Haifeng would have been murdered. Sure. Since Gu Ning made the arrangement for her, Gu Man agreed. Jade beauty jewelry was as popular as usual, and it made a lot more money than other jewelry brands. Therefore, many other jewelry businessmen were jealous of Gu Ning and Zhou Xinghong, but they could do nothing about it. Gu Ning had the full support of the Tang family after all. Since Jade Beauty Jewelry already opened its branch in City B, its branch in the capital was about to open too. Gu Ning thought that she'd better set up a processing plant in the capital as well, because the processing plant in City G couldn't satisfy the needs of the expanding jewelry branches. Thinking of that, Gu Ning called Qin Songyi. Hi, Songyi, I need a processing plant to produce the jade jewelry for Jade Beauty Jewelry. Could you please help me find one? Call me once you find the biggest factory, and I'll let the manager of Jade Beauty Jewelry contact you after that, Gu Ning said. Zhou Xinghong would fly to the capital for the jewelry branch there, so Gao Yi would be responsible for the jewelry delivery this time. Sure, boss, Qin Songyi said. Oh, aren't there several private houses behind the building of our corporation? They occupy around 700 square meters, and a real estate developer came to acquire it yesterday to build an office building, but the deal hasn't been settled yet because the acquiring price is a little low. Do you need the land? Qin Songyi wasn't sure whether Gu Ning wanted to expand her corporation, so he didn't call her yesterday when he found it. Now, since Gu Ning called him today, he mentioned it on the phone. Hearing that, Gu Ning's face lit up. Go acquire it, as long as they offer a reasonable price. A piece of land which was around 700 square meters large might cost at least 100 million yuan in the capital. Gu Ning understood that very well, but she was unwilling to pay a much higher price for it. Gu Ning always had the idea to expand her corporation, so if she could acquire the land behind the building of her corporation, it would be much better. Sure, boss, Qin Songyi said. He understood that Gu Ning must want the land very much from her tone, and he felt happy that he told Gu Ning about it on time. Oh, Gu Ning said before she was about to hang up. I also need a gym, so please help me find one which is on sale. Gu Ning needed a gym not to make money, but to use it as a training place for the bodyguards of her security company which she was going to establish in the near future. She would only hire retired soldiers who were all well trained, so she planned to open training classes to teach people fighting skills as well. No problem, boss, Qin Songyi said again. When Leng Xiaoting heard that Gu Ning turned to another person for help, he was displeased. Why didn't Gu Ning ask him for help? However, when he heard the person call Gu Ning boss, he knew that the person must work for Gu Ning. In that case, Leng Xiaoting wouldn't mind it. When Zhao Xiaoxian got home, she didn't cry or break things, but seemed quite sad. She took out a bottle of strong alcohol, which scared Mrs. Zhao. Mrs. Zhao understood that Zhao Xiaoxian must be in a terrible mood after arguing with Lin Tianyu today, but she had never seen Zhao Xiaoxian drink by herself. Xiaoxian, what are you doing? Mrs. Zhao grabbed the bottle away. Drowning my sorrows. I broke up with Lin Tianyu, properly this time. I lost him. Zhao Xiaoxian whimpered, but still didn't cry out loud. This was the first time that she had been able to control her emotions. Visit novilbin.c/m for the L-test updates. What? Mrs. Zhao was shocked. Is he really going to try to get Yuzi back? Yes, Zhao Xiaoxian said. In fact, Lin Tianyu never liked me. He agreed to be my boyfriend just because our families are of equal social status, and I'm the only child of our family, so he could inherit our family's properties in the future. However, Yuzi is now more valuable in his eyes, so he dumped me. I also realized today that I feel so tired being in a relationship with him. Zhao Xiaoxian already knew, but she chose to turn a blind eye on it when she was in love with Lin Tianyu. She loved him so much that she was willing to treat him to the best of her ability even though he was merely taking advantage of her. Once he broke her heart, she realized that it was just a dream. What? How can he treat you like that? Mrs. Zhao was mad. I can't tolerate it. I must call him right now. Mrs. Zhao said, and took out her phone. Please don't. Zhao Xiaoxian stopped her mother, because she was feeling depressed. It's meaningless and useless. Mom, please don't argue with Yuzi either, because she isn't someone our family can mess with right now. It isn't her fault either, and it's impossible that she will be with Lin Tianyu again. It is all Lin Tianyu's idea, and he'll suffer a double loss. Zhao Xiaoxian had never been so mature and sensible before as she was right now. Life had taught her an important lesson. Seeing Zhao Xiaoxian being so calm, Mrs. Zhao was surprised, but agreed with her. Compared with Mrs. Lin, Mrs. Zhao wasn't as selfish and arrogant, even though she also spoiled Zhao Xiaoxian rotten. Lin Tianyu was also in a bad mood when he got home because Yuzi had rejected him. Seeing that, Mrs. Lin was displeased, because she thought that Yuzi must have been absent again. What? You didn't see her? I did, but she rejected me, Lin Tianyu said with impatience. What? She rejected you? How dare she do that? Mrs. Lin couldn't believe her ears. In her eyes, Yuzi should feel honored that Lin Tianyu was willing to get her back, but Yuzi rejected him. What? She's gained some fame now, so now she thinks she's superior to us? Mrs. Lin said in an ironic tone. Lin Tianyu remained silent, then walked into his room. Although Mrs. Lin thought that it was Yuzi's fault that she rejected Lin Tianyu, she still believed that it was necessary for her to meet Yuzi given Yuzi's importance now. Thinking of that, she took her handbag and left the house. Although Mrs. Lin didn't know the address of Charm, it wasn't difficult for her to find it since Charm was very famous now. When Mrs. Lin arrived at Fengshan Shopping Mall, she went straight to Charm. It was almost time for lunch, but there were still many people in Charm. Yuzi, come out here right now. Mrs. Lin ordered in an unkind tone at the door of Charm. People who were shopping inside turned to look at her. Seeing Mrs. Lin, Yuzi felt annoyed. It was obvious that Mrs. Lin came here for nothing good. Even so, Yuzi still asked politely, Mrs. Lin, may I help? Get out here now. Mrs. Lin ordered again. Yuzi was displeased. If you have anything to tell me, you can say it right now. Are you sure? Mrs. Lin asked, like she was determined to embarrass Yuzi today. Yuzi, however, didn't think that she had done anything shameful, so she didn't mind it. Mrs. Lin, are you afraid that people might laugh at you? Yuzi asked on purpose. Mrs. Lin felt that Yuzi wasn't respectful of her, so she was mad. Very well, I can tell you right here, right now, and I hope that you won't feel ashamed. Saying that, Mrs. Lin walked inside and sat down on the sofa. Excuse me for a while please, Yuzi said to the other customers in the store. It's fine. The other customers didn't mind, but they knew that Mrs. Lin wasn't a kind people. Some stayed in the store waiting to see a drama, while some wanted to give Yuzi a helping hand. Luckily, Yuzi already had many loyal customers who were willing to help her. There were 2 saleswomen in the store too, but they were busy serving customers, so Yuzi poured a glass of water for Mrs. Lin in person. Visit novilbin.c/m for the L-test updates. May I know what you want to talk to me about, Mrs. Lin? Yuzi asked in an indifferent tone. Tianyu told me that you refused to get back together with him, Mrs. Lin said. Yes, Yuzi said with a calm face, like it was something unimportant. In fact, it was something unimportant in her eyes now. What? You think you're famous now, so you're superior to us? Mrs. Lin said arrogantly. Yuzi laughed, and didn't bother to hide her intense dislike for Mrs. Lin. I don't understand why you said that. I believe that I have the right to reject Lin Tianyu. I don't care if you reject another person, but I won't allow you to reject my son. Don't forget that Tianyu never despised you when you were poor and had nothing. Mrs. Lin said. Yuzi couldn't believe that Mrs. Lin could be so shameless. Mrs. Lin, I've already broken up with Lin Tianyu for more than a year, and he dumped me precisely because I was poor. He also cheated on me and slept with my rich friend. You said that I could never marry into your family before, so why have you come back to me right now? Yuzi said. Why? It was obvious that Mrs. Lin wanted to ride on Yuzi's coattails since she was famous now. They didn't keep their voices low, so everyone in the store was able to hear their conversation. In the beginning, onlookers thought that Yuzi dumped her boyfriend once she became successful, but it soon turned out that it was her ex-boyfriend's fault. Her ex-boyfriend had cheated on her, which was totally unacceptable. Mrs. Lin didn't expect that Yuzi would dare to argue with her like that, and felt quite embarrassed amid people's looks of disdain. Yuzi, mind your language. I'm doing you an honor that I came to talk to you today. Mrs. Lin said. She still believed that Yuzi was inferior to her and her family. I should mind my language? Why? Mrs. Lin, I have to say that you're the most shameless person I've ever seen in my whole life. Yuzi said without delay. Exactly. She's so shameless. Someone opened her mouth to support Yuzi. I agree. She despised Miss Yu because she was poor in the old days, and now she comes to Miss Yu just because Miss Yu is successful. Does she have any sense of shame? Another person said. I've never seen such a snobbish person. Mrs. Lin was annoyed, but didn't know how to argue back. It seemed that she realized that what she just said wasn't fair. Yuzi, how can you be so cold-blooded? Mrs. Lin was unwilling to give up. I am cold-blooded? Yuzi wore an ironic smile. Let me be honest with you, I feel very disgusted when I think of your son who cheated on me. I think Miss Yu is right. A noble woman walked out from the crowd at this moment. You're Mrs. Lin, right? You are a woman too, can you tolerate it if your husband cheats on you? If you can, I have nothing else to say, because we have opposite values. When Mrs. Lin saw the noble woman, she was shocked and stood up at once. A Mrs. Young. Mrs. Lin knew this Mrs. Young without a doubt, and it was obvious that Mrs. Young wasn't a normal woman given Mrs. Lin's attitude towards her. In fact, Mrs. Young was born in a super-rich family and married a senior official in the government. Although Mrs. Yang's family was just a common super-rich family, and her husband wasn't a very important official either, Mrs. Lin's family and husband were hardly comparable to Mrs. Yang's. Mrs. Lin knew Mrs. Young, but Mrs. Young didn't know her. Miss Yu, are you single? Mrs. Young asked Yuzi with appreciation in her eyes. Yeah, Yuzi said without thinking further. I think that Miss Yu is a very outstanding young woman. Would you mind meeting my son one day when you're free? Mrs. Young said. Mrs. Young was arranging for Yuzi and her son to meet each other. What? Yuzi was surprised, and felt shy. La test novls on, n, vel by slash, dot, co. Mrs. Lin was also astonished. She could not believe that Mrs. Young was willing to introduce Yuzi to her son. If Yuzi could marry into the Yang family, she would become a member of a super-rich as well as powerful family. Thinking of that, Mrs. Lin was reluctant to accept it, but didn't dare say anything now. Would you mind? Mrs. Yang understood that she surprised Yuzi, but she didn't care. She just thought that Yuzi was a good girl, so she hoped that Yuzi could meet her son and see what would happen. The Yang family wasn't a common family, so it was unlikely that Mrs. Yang chose Yuzi because of her boss. Mrs. Young was attracted to Yuzi's outstanding ability and good manners instead. In addition, Yuzi's career wouldn't be as successful as the Yang family's business unless she had Gu Ning's unusual ability. Therefore, if Yuzi was able to marry into the Yang family, she was quite lucky. Of course not, Yuzi said at once. Although she knew Mrs. Yang's purpose, she didn't think that there was anything wrong with it. It was still too early to say whether she could be together with Mrs. Yang's son. She could just go make a new friend anyway. Great. I already have your number, so I'll tell him to contact you later. You can share a meal and watch a film together or something, Mrs. Young said with a happy smile. Yuzi flushed a little. Mrs. Lin knew that she shouldn't stay here any longer, so she left in silence. When she got back home, she made a lot of noise to vent her anger, and even woke Lin Tianyu, who was taking a nap. It's so noisy. Couldn't you be quiet for a while? Lin Tianyu raised his voice in anger. What happened? Lin Tianyu walked out and asked his mother. I went to Yuzi's store just now, Mrs. Lin said. Hearing that, Lin Tianyu frowned. Why? I just want to ask her why she rejected you, Mrs. Lin said in annoyance. And then? Lin Tianyu asked in a hurry. He knew that Yuzi wouldn't change her mind, but he still had hope. She exposed your betrayal right in front of everyone in public, and I felt so humiliated. Mrs. Lin said in an aggrieved tone. Lin Tianyu didn't say anything. He was disappointed, but wasn't surprised because Yuzi had said the same thing to him. Since Yuzi rejected you, you can go back to being with Zhao Xiaoxian. Mrs. Lin lost hope for Yuzi, and she was also mad at Yuzi's attitude. Even though Yuzi was a famous designer now, she wouldn't accept her. I've already broken up with Zhao Xiaoxian, Lin Tianyu said. Say some sweet nothings to her, and she'll forgive you as always, Mrs. Lin said. She didn't realize how serious it was. I don't think so. She came across the scene of me begging Yuzi to forgive me, Lin Tianyu said. He now felt utterly regretful, because Yuzi wouldn't accept him and Zhao Xiaoxian broke up with him too. Although he knew that Zhao Xiaoxian loved him very much, he understood that she wouldn't forgive him this time. Actually, he had no intention to get Zhao Xiaoxian back given the way she had treated him when they were together. What? Mrs. Lin was shocked. How could you let her catch you on sight? If she isn't willing to forgive you this time, you can't inherit her family's properties in the future. Right at this moment, Mrs. Lin finally realized how serious it was. I have no idea what to do now. Lin Tianyu said with impatience. Mrs. Lin said, I think you can try. Maybe she'll forgive you. All right, I'll handle it myself. Stop telling me how to deal with it. Lin Tianyu lost his patience and left his home. Mrs. Lin was displeased, but Lin Tianyu was already gone. Mrs. Lin thought for a while, then called Zhao Xiaoxian, but Zhao Xiaoxian's phone was turned off, so she called Mrs. Zhao. Although Mrs. Zhao listened to Zhao Xiaoxian and didn't contact Lin Tianyu or his mother, she wouldn't refuse to answer Mrs. Lin's call, because she wanted to seize this chance to vent her anger. "Oh, Mrs. Lin, may I help?" Mrs. Zhao said in a sarcastic tone. Mrs. Lin, of course, understood that Mrs. Zhao was mad at Lin Tianyu, and it was Lin Tianyu's fault after all. "Well, Mrs. Zhao, I'm so sorry for what has happened to Xiaoxian, but Tianyu is very regretful now. He doesn't know how to face Xiaoxian, so I called Xiaoxian on his behalf, but Xiaoxuan's phone is turned off." "He's regretful now? Really?" Mrs. Zhao laughed like she had just heard a funny joke. "Mrs. Lin, I'm not an idiot. Lin Tianyu must have been rejected by Yuzi, so he came back to Xiaoxian. Lin Tianyu doesn't like Xiaoxian at all, and all he wants is our family's properties. Xiaoxian knows it very well, and she's made up her mind to move on." After that, Mrs. Zhao hung up on Mrs. Lin. Mrs. Lin felt so hopeless now, because Lin Tianyu suffered a double loss this time. All the other families of equal social status as their family that they knew had a son at least, and those families wouldn't leave all the properties to a daughter. A daughter would have a good dowry at the most, which wasn't what Mrs. Lin wanted. Mrs. Lin hoped that Lin Tianyu could marry a girl who was born in a richer or more powerful family than them, but it was impossible. At this moment, Mrs. Lin regretted that she had supported Lin Tianyu to get Yuzi back. Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting left the Tang family's house together because someone had just called her. The man claimed to be the general manager of Xianglong Jewelry. He wanted to talk about business with her. Gu Ning, who had a great memory, remembered that they had exchanged name cards at the release conference. There was no need for Gu Ning to guess because she knew his purpose very well. However, since he didn't say it aloud yet, Gu Ning wouldn't reject right now. Therefore, she went to meet the man along with Leng Xiaoting. When Gu Ning left, she called Xiaoya and told her to fly back to City F with Gu Man. Afterwards, Gu Ning booked plane tickets for Xiaoya and Gu Man. Gu Man and Tang Yinfan seemed to make no progress in their relationship, but they had a tacit understanding. Their way of getting along with each other was a bit like the feeling of a couple who had been married for many years. There was no passion between them, but there was an unusual harmony. They weren't a young couple after all, so they wouldn't hug or kiss one another like Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting. In a restaurant, Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting walked into the appointed private room, and there were two men sitting inside. One was the general manager of Xianglong Jewelry, Du Haizhe, while the other was his secretary. Du Haizhe was a man who was around 34 years old. He was wearing a suit like a professional businessman. Seeing Gu Ning walking in, Du Haizhe and his secretary stood up to welcome them. "Please have a seat, Miss Gu and this gentleman," Du Haizhe said politely. He didn't know Leng Xiaoting's identity, so he had no idea how to address him. "Nice to meet you, Manger Du," Gu Ning said, then sat down with Leng Xiaoting. Du Haizhe's secretary poured 2 cups of tea for them at once. Visit novilbin.c/m for the L-test updates. Gu Ning didn't say anything further, but enjoyed the tea. "Miss Gu, the thing is our company hopes to join Jade Beauty Jewelry. If you're willing to cooperate with our company can provide you the best benefits," Du Haizhe said with sincerity. Unfortunately, he was doomed to disappointment. Hearing that, Gu Ning wasn't surprised at all, because she guessed it beforehand. She smiled and said, "Thank you so much for your appreciation of Jade Beauty Jewelry, but I'm very sorry. My company has no intention of forming an alliance." Du Haizhe was struck dumb for a second, because he didn't understand why Gu Ning rejected this good chance to make a lot of money. "Miss Gu, don't you want to make more money?" Du Haizhe asked. "I do, but I have no intention to let others share my profits," Gu Ning said plainly. "Miss Gu, could you please consider it?" Du Haizhe frowned. He was unwilling to give up. I'm sorry, Gu Ning said again. Fine, if so, I won't insist. Although we can't forge an alliance, I still hope to make friends with Miss Gu. If you don't mind, can we share a meal together? Du Haijia asked. He felt disappointed that Gu Ning refused to cooperate with them, but he wouldn't annoy her either. They were peers, but there was no conflict between them. Jade Beauty Jewelry focused on jade, while Xiaolong Jewelry provided jewelry made of gold, silver, jade, diamonds, and so on. I'm also glad to make friends with Manager Du, but unfortunately I'm very busy this afternoon, so I'm afraid that we can't share a meal together today, Gu Ning said. She was going to dine with Su Jinchen and the others because they had to fly back to the capital tomorrow morning. Well, what a shame. I hope that we can share a meal together the next time, Du Haijia said. He didn't mind whether it was just an excuse or the truth. Afterwards, Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting left. After Gu Qing received the skincare products, everyone was shocked by their prices, which were as high as the international brands. Would their customers buy them? Only 1/3 of their customers were rich people, and the rest were only relatively rich. An annual membership fee of over 10,000 yuan wasn't a problem, but it would rise to dozens of thousands of yuan a year if they changed the skincare products. As for the emulsion, serum and skin toner, the old set was 1,000 yuan, but the new set was almost 4,000 yuan. The prices of the rest of the products all doubled at least. If they increased the prices all of a sudden, their members probably wouldn't accept it. Thinking of that, Gu Qing called Gu Ning at once. Ning, the prices of the skincare products are much higher. Will our customers pay for them? Gu Qing sounded worried. Aunt, don't worry. You can choose 10 lucky members to try them for free at the opening ceremony. They'll see the effects within a short time, and I believe that they will be willing to pay for them afterwards. Oh, there are also many samples, and you can send them to customers. Once customers see the effects, they'll buy them, Gu Ning said. Great, I'll do as you said. Gu Qing trusted Gu Ning under any circumstances. Since Gu Ning said so, she would listen to her. After hanging up with Gu Ning, Gu Qing gathered the staff in the store together to try the new skincare products. Wang Sufan volunteered first, followed by others. After trying the new skincare products, everyone was amazed. People all saw the most noticeable changes on Wang Sufan's face, because she was the eldest among the staff except for Gu Qing. Gu Qing was well nourished by Gu Ning's magical power, so her skin was very smooth and almost flawless now. In that case, she didn't see a big change on her face. Wang Sufan's skin, on the other hand, was dark yellow with many wrinkles and freckles. However, her freckles faded, her face lit up, and the wrinkles weren't as deep after putting on the new skincare products for a short time. Jesus! I can't believe my eyes. Me either. This new set of skincare products are really effective. I feel like my skin was moisturized right away. The acne on my face has also faded. Wow, I don't think that even the international brands are so effective. I agree. Now I think that the prices are a little low. Everyone was amazed by the visible effects. Boss, can I buy a set? Someone asked Gu Qing. Sure, and you can have a 50% discount for the first set and 30% discount from the second set, Gu Qing said. Gu Qing was really a generous boss. Thanks. Everyone got excited after hearing that. They worked here and their salaries weren't low. In addition, this beauty salon was very popular, so they were able to make over 10,000 yuan each month. So although the new skincare products were very expensive, they could still afford it because Gu Qing gave them a big discount. The opening was the day after tomorrow, so they needed to inform their VIP members tomorrow. After hanging up the call with Gu Qing, Gu Ning remembered that she should share the skincare products with her friends too. When they were about to arrive at Fengshan Shopping Mall, Gu Ning told Leng Xiaoting to stop the car at the southern door, and she would leave a set in jade beauty jewelry so that Yuzi could pick it up when she was free. Gu Ning was carrying a backpack all the time, so Leng Xiaoting wouldn't be curious about why she took out a set of skincare products all of a sudden. Gu Ning sent Yuzi a message and told her that she would leave a set of new skincare products in jade beauty jewelry, which was a gift for her. Full 0W current novels on n/o/v/3l/b in.co/m. After a while, Yuzi read the message and thanked Gu Ning. She believed that the skincare products had to be very good, since it was a gift from Gu Ning. There were many people in jade beauty jewelry at this time. Although they hired a manager for the branch of jade beauty jewelry in City B, Zhou Xinghong still stayed here the entire time these last few days. Gu Ning wouldn't be gone for long, so she told Leng Xiaoting to wait for her in the car. Once Gu Ning walked in the store, she became the focus of people's attention. "Look, it's Miss Gu." "Oh, I finally get to see Miss Gu in real life." Miss Gu is even more beautiful in real life than on TV. Exactly. Facing people's attention and discussion, Gu Ning just smiled and nodded at them. Miss Gu is greeting us. She's so polite and modest. It's rare to see such a kind and successful figure now. They all complimented Gu Ning. When Gu Ning walked to the counter, she took out a set of skincare products along with a box of facial masks. "These are a gift for Yuzi, and she'll pick it up when she's free." "No problem, boss," a cashier said. "Where is Manager Zhou?" Gu Ning asked. "Manager Zhou and the new manager are in the office," the cashier said. "Great," Gu Ning said, then walked to the office. Although the new manager was very professional, he was just in charge of the branch, so Zhou Xinghong still needed to teach him about jade beauty jewelry. Gu Ning knocked on the door of the office. "Come in," Zhou Xinghong said inside. Dies cover dated novels on NOV/E/Lbin.co. Gu Ning pushed the door open and walked in. Seeing that the visitor was Gu Ning, Zhou Xinghong and the new manager stood up at once. "Boss, nice to see you." "Have a seat please," Gu Ning said. "Uncle Zhou, I need you to go back to City G to prepare for the next batch of jade jewelry. Gao Yi will meet you in a few days, and you can deliver the goods to the capital for the opening day. I think that we can directly open the branch in the capital given the popularity of the branch in City B." In fact, Gu Ning could just make a call, but she told Zhou Xinghong in person since she was already here. "No problem, boss," Zhou Xinghong said. After that, Gu Ning left. Just as she walked out of the store, she received 2 successive calls from other jewelry managers, but she made an excuse and declined their invitations. She had no intention of forming an alliance after all, so there was no need for her to meet them. In the Pan family's house, Pan Zirwei's father had made several urgent calls and demanded to see him at home. Pan Zirwei had hung out with his friends overnight, so he was quite sleepy right now. The Pan family's house was located in a luxurious house district. "Zirwei, do you know Miss Gu?" Pan Zirwei's father asked him the moment he got back home. Pan Zirwei's father saw him on the news of the release conference and was very surprised. "Yeah, so?" Pan Zirwei yawned. "If so, I need you to do something for me. I think that jade beauty jewelry is a promising brand, and I want to join it," Pan Zirwei's father said. Joining referred to participating in a certain group or organization, which could be extended to the commercial field, referring to the agent joining of commercial brands. In other words, franchisees could open branches under the name of a certain brand. "Sure, I'll discuss it with her," Pan Zirwei said, then called Gu Ning. From the perspective of a company, joining was equal to make money. Many products were looking for joining by advertising, so Pan Zhiwei didn't think that it was a bad idea. Therefore, right after Gu Ning declined another 2 jewelry managers' invitations, she received Pan Zhiwei's call. "Boss, my father wants to join Jade Beauty Jewelry. What do you think?" Pan Zhiwei asked. "Boss?" Hearing that, Pan Zhiwei's father frowned. He wasn't dissatisfied, but was surprised that Pan Zhiwei called Gu Ning his boss. He knew very well that Pan Zhiwei despised women. However, it was understandable that Pan Zhiwei admired Gu Ning because she was a very outstanding girl. "Sorry, Jade Beauty Jewelry isn't open for alliance or joining," Gu Ning said. "Sure, I understand." Pan Zhiwei was obedient to Gu Ning's words, so he wouldn't ask further even if Gu Ning declined his offer. "Oh, boss, I'm going to open a club in 3 days. If you're free, can you come to attend its opening ceremony?" Pan Zhiwei asked with anticipation. Once Pan Zhiwei set the time of the opening ceremony, he invited Gu Ning. To Gu Ning's astonishment, Pan Zhiwei was going to run a business himself. In many people's eyes, he was just a rich second-generation heir who only knew how to have fun and couldn't care less about his future. All of a sudden, Pan Zhiwei changed his mind and decided to become involved in business. Pan Zhiwei's father was also shocked and couldn't believe his ears. "Zhiwei is going to open a club in 3 days?" Pan Zhiwei's father knew him very well. He never had the idea to build his career before, no matter how much his father had forced or enticed him. That being the case, Pan Zhiwei's father was more than surprised that he suddenly changed his mind. "Well, I'll go if I have nothing else to deal with at that time," Gu Ning said. "Great!" Pan Zhiwei understood that Gu Ning was busy, so he didn't pressure her. Afterwards, they hung up. Pan Zhiwei's father asked him at once, "Zhiwei, are you going to open a club?" It was so shocking that Pan Zhiwei's father even forgot to ask about Gu Ning's answer to his offer first. "Yes," Pan Zhiwei said. He didn't think that it was a big surprise. "Why didn't you tell me?" Pan Zhiwei's father asked. I think that my boss is very successful in business, and decided that I should learn something from her, and not embarrass her as her friend," Pan Zhiwei said. Pan Zhiwei's father was shocked again. He didn't expect that Pan Zhiwei changed his mind because of Gu Ning. It seemed that Gu Ning had a great influence on Pan Zhiwei. Speaking of Gu Ning, Pan Zhiwei's father remembered his offer to join her jewelry brand. "Zhiwei, what did she say about my joining in Jade Beauty Jewelry?" "My boss said Jade Beauty Jewelry isn't open for any alliances with other businessmen," Pan Zhiwei replied. "Isn't open for any alliances? She can make a lot of money from that." Pan Zhiwei's father rounded his eyes in shock. In that case, no matter how many branches Jade Beauty Jewelry were going to open, Jade Beauty Jewelry would be in charge of them without any franchisees in the middle. Pan Zhiwei's father didn't know what else to say. "Dad," Pan Zhiwei said, "you don't know how good my boss is at stone gambling. When I met her for the first time, she cut out a piece of jade and sold it for 35 million yuan. It's a piece of cake for her to make money." At the end, Pan Zhiwei's voice was full of admiration for Gu Ning. Hearing that, Pan Zhiwei's father was astonished. He had also heard that Gu Ning made the first bucket of gold by stone gambling, but he had never seen it himself, so he wasn't sure whether it was true. However, since his son told him in person, he believed that it could be real. Even though she doesn't lack money, she's a businesswoman after all. Doesn't she want to make as much money as possible? Pan Zhiwei's father said. He was unwilling to give up. "Dad, my boss is adamant and it's useless to try to persuade her. I don't want to ruin my relationship with her," Pan Zhiwei said with impatience. Well, Pan Zhiwei's father didn't know what to do now. He obviously didn't want to ruin Pan Zhiwei's relationship with Gu Ning. Although they couldn't cooperate, nobody wanted to lose a friend and gain a new enemy. Pan Zhiwei's father thought for a while, then remained silent. It was still early, so Gu Ning went to visit Tang Haifeng in the hospital. When she arrived, Master Lei and his son, Lei Haowei, were also in the ward. The Mu family, who maintained a good relationship with the Tang family, also came to visit Tang Haifeng. The leading role in the Mu family was Mu Xuxin, who was around 50 years old, and his son, Mu Wenqi, who was about 27 years old. In addition to them, Zhao Yiru was also there. Tang Yinrong, Jiang Lihua and Tang Jiakai stayed with Tang Haifeng, while Tang Yinheng and Chao Ruihua were gone for their work. Tang Jiakai didn't know that his grandfather had been injured until that afternoon. Luckily, his grandfather was fine now. Chao Wenjun and Chao Wenxin had also visited Tang Haifeng this afternoon, and they left 2 hours later. It would affect the patient's condition if there were too many people in the ward. Although Tang Haifeng was fine now, they still needed to act like he was injured. Zhao Yiru came to visit Tang Haifeng before the Lei family, and he noticed that Tang Haifeng was pretending to be unconscious. Tang Haifeng didn't want to keep it a secret from him either, so Tang Haifeng opened his eyes when Zhao Yiru was by his side, but he didn't tell him many details. The Lei family and the Mu family, however, Tang Haifeng decided to hide the truth from them, not because he didn't trust them, but because it would be better if fewer people knew the truth. Well, he was fine in the afternoon yesterday, but now, Master Lei was sorrowful, and blamed himself for this. I wish I had persuaded him to visit my friend with me. Master Lei had invited Tang Haifeng to enjoy tea at one of his friend's places, but Tang Haifeng had declined, so he hadn't insisted. If he had insisted, Tang Haifeng would have agreed. Master Lei felt quite regretful that he had missed the chance to save his old friend's life. However, that was fate. Uncle Lei, please don't blame yourself for this. It has nothing to do with you, Tang Yinrong said to comfort Master Lei. Indeed. Uncle Lei, it's not your fault at all, Jiang Lihua said. What did the doctor say? Lei Haowei asked. Although he seems fine and healthy from the report, he stayed unconscious for a long time, Tang Yinrong sighed with worry. It's even more serious if we can't find the cause, because we don't know how to deal with it now, Jiang Lihua said, and nobody noticed that she was just acting. They felt a little guilty to deceive Master Lei, but they had to do it. Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting walked into the ward together. When Gu Ning's sight fell on Mu Xuxin, she was surprised, because Kei resembled Mu Xuxin. Kei's real name was Mu Yi. Was there any family connection between them? Was it just a coincidence? Your F48 stories on /o/v/lbn.cm. Gu Ning greeted Master Lei and Zhao Yiru, then Tang Yinrong introduced Lei Haowei, Mu Xuxin and Mu Wenqi to Gu Ning. Gu Ning also greeted them politely. Master Lei and Zhao Yiru were aware that Gu Ning was Tang Yinfan's biological daughter, but the others didn't know, so they were quite surprised. Tang Yinrong explained that Tang Haifeng regarded Gu Ning as his own granddaughter because Gu Ning closely resembled Tang Yinfan. Tang Haifeng had told them not to expose Gu Ning's real identity before they made it public. Tang Haifeng said the same thing to Master Lei, so Master Lei also kept it a secret and didn't even tell his own son. They all knew that Tang Yinfan never married or had any children, so they believed Tang Yinrong's words. Tang Yinrong also introduced Leng Xiaoting as Gu Ning's friend, and didn't tell them many details. The Lei family and the Mu family left after a while. Since they were gone, Tang Haifeng opened his eyes and relaxed his limbs. Zhao Yiru stayed for a while longer before he walked out. Tang Haifeng said, I think that they will take action again after tomorrow. They were, of course, the Tang family's enemies. However, to Tang Haifeng's surprise, their enemies took action right away. Quan Mingkai called Tang Yinrong and told her that there was a sudden problem with the proposal, and their business partner would arrive at 2 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. They had to hold a meeting with the board of directors to discuss it at 10 a.m. tomorrow. It couldn't be a coincidence. Without a strong leader in the Tang family's business group, the business partners felt anxious, which was a good chance to elect a new chairman. No matter what, members of the Tang family had to attend the meeting tomorrow. If Tang Deming successfully persuaded a certain business partner to work with him for the purpose of electing a new chairman, he must be confident and well prepared. What was worse, he could also have the support of Fu Kaiyu, Qin Shongxing and Wu Boyan. In that case, they were very likely to win, because neither Tang Yinheng nor Tang Yinrong had the ability or talent to run a business well, although they owned a lot more shares than them. The leading person in a business group wasn't the person who possesses the most shares, but the one who was most able to lead the corporation. If Tang Deming wanted to achieve his goal, he had to get rid of Tang Yinfan and Tang Haifeng who were in his way, otherwise whatever he was doing was meaningless. Anyway, they would find out at the meeting tomorrow. After a while, Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting left. Once she got in her car, Kay called her. "Boss, I found nothing dirty or illegal about Tang Deming," Kay said. Hearing that, Gu Ning wasn't very surprised, because Tang Yinfan had told her that Tang Deming had been very careful although he was ambitious. Besides, Tang Deming didn't take action until now, so Tang Yinfan was certain that there must be someone else behind Tang Deming's back. It was obvious that the person who supported Tang Deming behind the scene was very mysterious, and they failed to find any useful information about him. It was a battle without smoke. "It's fine." Gu Ning didn't mind. All of a sudden Gu Ning said, "Oh, I met a man who is around 50 years old today. He resembles you and even has the same surname as you." Somehow, Gu Ning couldn't help connecting Kay with Mu Shixin. Kay, on the other hand, was struck dumb for a moment. It was probably because he already knew who the man was, but he only had a strong hatred towards him. He had been avoiding meeting the man for many years, in case he would lose control of himself and do something bad. "Oh, really? We were probably family in a previous incarnation," Kay joked, trying to sound relaxed, but Gu Ning knew that there must be something wrong. It seemed that there was a grudge between them. Gu Ning realized that she shouldn't have said that to Kay, so she changed the topic at once. "How is the decoration going?" "Well, we've hired more people, so it'll be done within a month," Kay replied. "Great," Gu Ning said, then hung up. Kay put his phone down, and wore a cold expression. Seeing that, Chin Songi asked with concern, "What happened?" Upstated from n0/v/lbn/co/m. "Boss just told me that she met a man who resembles me and also has the surname Mu," Kay said in a deep voice filled with hatred. Chin Songi frowned. "Do you think it might be him?" "Yeah," Kay said. Although he wasn't 100% sure, he believed that it could be true. "If you're unwilling to accept it, pay him back," Chin Songi said. Chin Songi knew Kay's story very well, and he was always supportive if Kay wanted to get what belonged to him back. Even catched to do it, but he kept the promise that he had made to his mother, and tolerated it. Mu Shixin was actually Kay's biological father who had abandoned his wife and son for wealth and power. Back then, their family was dirt poor, and Mu Shixin became a migrant worker in a big city. Within 3 years, he made some money and sent a lot back to his family. One day, he said that his company had an overseas project which would pay a high salary for the workers, but only single men could join the project. Therefore, he had to divorce Kay's mother before he went abroad for the next 3 years. Kay's mother trusted him and did what he asked. During the following 3 years, Mu Shixin did send a lot of money back to his family, and Kay along with Kay's mother were able to live a good life within a short time. However, after 3 years, Mu Shixin never mentioned remarrying Kay's mother. Kay's mother said nothing, so Kay wasn't aware of it. When Kay was 17 years old, a woman came to their home along with a group of strong men and damaged their house. Kay's mother became ill after that. Kay had asked his mother who those people were, but his mother wasn't willing to tell him. A month later, his mother was about to die and finally told him the truth. It turned out that Mu Shixin never thought to remarry Kay's mother after their divorce. A girl who was born in a rich family fell in love with Mu Shixin when he worked in the big city, and they moved in together afterwards. The girl soon got pregnant, so Mu Shixin divorced Kay's mother as soon as he could, then married the girl. Mu Shixin didn't even bother to tell Kay's mother the real reason for their divorce until Kay's mother requested a remarriage. Kay's mother had suffered a mental breakdown after hearing the shocking news, but she had to accept the conditions that Mu Shixin laid down. In order to let Kay believe that he still had an intact family, Kay's mother kept it a secret that Kay's father was no longer a member of their family. Mu Shixin pretended that he had been working outside the entire time and sent a certain amount of money back to them every month. Sometimes, he would even come back for a while. The woman who had damaged their house was precisely Mu Shixin's new wife. Mu Shixin's new wife didn't know that Mu Shixin was still supporting Kay and Kay's mother, so she was angry once she found out. Once Kay found out the truth, he hated Mu Shixin to death, and the woman who indirectly caused the death of his mother. However, his mother never allowed him to find them because Mu Shixin had paid for Kay's tuition fee and living expenses during the past 17 years, even though he had abandoned them for wealth and power. In addition, Mu Shixin's new wife was from a rich and powerful family, and Kay wasn't their match at all. Accordingly, Kay's mother had forced Kay to make a promise that he would never find Mu Shixin. Kay was reluctant to do it, but he still agreed in order to let his mother die in peace. Kay knew that Mu Shixin lived in City B, so he refused to go to City B since then. Although Kay made a promise to his mother that he would never find his father, he still hated him throughout these years. Therefore, he was afraid that he might do something he shouldn't do if he met him in City B. Even now he still had the same feelings. Chin Songi knew that the grudge was hidden deep in Kay's heart, and it could never be wiped off. Chin Songi wasn't willing to see Kay living an unhappy life because of it. I won't find him on my own initiative, but I won't stop myself from taking revenge if I meet him one day, Kay said. He would keep his promise to his mother, but he would follow his heart if he ran into Mu Shixin and that woman. The/W novel chapters are published on no/vel/bin.co/m. Chin Songi thought that it wasn't a bad idea. Around 5 p.m., Yuzi received a call from a man named Yang Ziqian who was Mrs. Yang's son. Yuzi had mixed emotions, because she didn't expect that it would move so fast. Yang Ziqian asked Yuzi whether she was free, and he invited her to share a meal together. Since Yuzi agreed to meet Mrs. Yang's son, it would be inappropriate if she rejected. Although she wasn't familiar with Mrs. Yang or her family background, she knew that Mrs. Yang must be a noble woman given Mrs. Lin's attitude towards her. In addition, Yang Ziqian invited her to meet in a public place, so it would be safe. Therefore, Yuzi agreed. For Yuzi's convenience, Yang Ziqian set the meeting place right in Fengshan Shopping Mall, which left a good impression on Yuzi. Before Yang Ziqian called Yuzi, he already booked a table at a restaurant owned by him and one of his friends. Since Yuzi agreed to share a meal with him, Yang Ziqian left for Fengshan Shopping Mall at once. The appointed time was 6 p.m., but Yang Ziqian arrived 20 minutes early to show his respect for Yuzi. Yuzi, of course, wouldn't arrive just before 6 p.m., because it would be impolite. Both of them were people with good manners. Accordingly, Yuzi arrived at the restaurant 10 minutes early. However, when Yuzi walked to the table that Yang Ziqian told her to, she was surprised to see the man sitting by the table. "It's you!" Facing Yuzi's reaction, Yang Ziqian wasn't surprised at all, but smiled and stood up. "Miss Yu, nice to meet you." I'm Yang Ziqian. I'm glad that you still remember me. Please have a seat. Yu Zi and Yang Ziqian didn't know each other, but they had met once before, which was unforgettable. On a day 3 months ago, Yu Zi was ambling in a park, and an old man who was practicing with a sword suddenly lost control of it and the sword flew at Yu Zi's back. Right at this moment, someone grabbed her and moved out of the way. Was Se. Yu Zi thought that the man was sexually harassing her, so she slapped him across his face without hesitation. After that, she found out that it was just a misunderstanding. Yu Zi felt embarrassed, apologizing and thanking him repeatedly afterwards. Yang Ziqian didn't mind, but the slap made him remember Yu Zi. He thought that she was very funny. In the following 3 months, he couldn't help laughing when he remembered what happened. Yesterday, he saw Yu Zi at the release conference of Jade Beauty Jewelry and Charm, and he appreciated her for her creative designs. In the beginning, he didn't have the plan to chase Yu Zi, but his mother suddenly wanted to set him up with a girl. In fact, he didn't want to go on a blind date, because it wasn't romantic at all. However, when he found out that the girl was Yu Zi, he agreed without delay. After Yu Zi was seated, Yang Ziqian gave the menu to her. Please order whatever you like. Thanks, Yu Zi said, then started to read the menu. Since they had met before, they weren't strangers, and Yu Zi felt much more relaxed. She ordered a steak, a corn juice, and a plate of fruit salad. Although there had been a misunderstanding between them before, it had been cleared up right away, so they didn't feel embarrassed at all, and enjoyed the meal. Gu Ning was also dining with her friends at the same time. Boss, when will you go back to the capital? Su Jingchen asked. No idea, Leng Xiaoting said. He hoped that he wouldn't be assigned any tasks these 2 days, so he could spend more time alone with Gu Ning. Even though they had been together for the past few days, there were always other people by their sides. Fine, Su Jingchen said. Gao Yi and Xiaoyu went for a walk after dinner, but soon noticed that someone was stalking them. They didn't pay much attention to the man, but walked to a place with few people around. They didn't turn around to search for their target until there was nobody around them. At a glance, they focused on a man in black with a mask and baseball cap. The man also understood that he had already been discovered, but he didn't avoid Gao Yi's and Xiaoyu's sight and walked straight to them. Both Gao Yi and Xiaoyu remained silent, staring at the man. The man stopped 2 meters away from them, then said, Flying eagle, flying bird, good for you. You're able to live a normal life now. Hearing that, Gao Yi and Xiaoyu were surprised, but stayed calm and alert. Since the man could recognize them, he must have the same occupation as them. If he came to them right now, he must have been assigned a task to kill them. Are you here to kill us? Gao Yi asked, although he already had the answer. Even though their names weren't on the wanted list now, it was possible that the leader of the killer organization they had served wanted them killed. Not really. To Gao Yi and Xiaoya's astonishment, the man denied it. Then why? Gao Yi asked with a doubtful look. Well, the man said in a self-mocking tone. I'm on the wanted list now the same as you were, but I'm not as able as you are to be able to wipe my name away, so I'm being chased now. Hearing that, Gao Yi and Xiaoyu frowned and were curious about the reason why his name was listed on the wanted list. Normally, the killers whose names were put on the wanted list had betrayed their organizations. One killer wouldn't put another killer's name on the wanted list, because they preferred to solve the problem on their own. Although they were curious, they didn't ask for the reason, because curiosity killed the cat. How did you find us and why? Gao Yi asked again. I encountered you just now, and of course I want you to help me wipe my name from the wanted list. I'll owe you a favor, and I'll do everything for you to the best of my ability, the man said. Sorry, we don't have the ability to wipe our names away. Someone helped us, Gao Yi said. Who? The man asked. Shouldn't you tell me whether you're telling me the truth first? I can't tell you the person's name right now, Gowie said. The man was struck dumb for a second. He thought that Gowie's words made sense, so he took off his cap and mask. A young face with a knife scar appeared. Black Cat. Seeing the man's face, Gowie and Xiaoyu were surprised to meet a familiar person. Their names had been on the wanted list, so it was normal that other killers knew their faces and code names, but they were still astonished to see a familiar face. In the killer's world, their identities had to be kept a secret, so one wouldn't know many familiar people unless they served the same organization, or had met each other at the same training place, or had fought against one another while fulfilling the same task. They met Black Cat in a conflict when they had been assigned the same task. Although they had almost killed each other, they had fulfilled the task with one another's help, so they had shared the reward at the end. If you don't believe it, you can check the wanted list. I can wait, Black Cat said. Well, it's not up to me whether to help you or not, and I think that you will have to satisfy the conditions she set, Gowie said, because he knew that Gu Ning wouldn't agree without any conditions. What conditions? Black Cat asked. He didn't think that it was a big deal, because there was no free lunch in this world. You will probably have to work for her for the rest of your life, Gowie said. Hearing that, Black Cat frowned. What was the difference between that and his previous life in the killer organization? Well, we're willing to work for her for the rest of our lives, but it still depends on her whether she wants to use you. I can only say that she's a very successful businesswoman who's never done illegal things, Gowie said. He understood that Black Cat was reluctant to live a life which was full of blood and killing anymore. He wasn't sure whether Gu Ning would help Black Cat, but he had to know Black Cat's willingness before he told Gu Ning. Gowie was willing to give Black Cat a helping hand because he thought that Black Cat was a great killer, and Gu Ning probably needed him. As for Black Cat's character, Gowie didn't know much about it, and it was up to Gu Ning whether to keep him or not. If it is possible, I hope that I can discuss it with her in person, Black Cat said. I can help you mention it on the phone, but she's the decision maker, Gowie said, and Black Cat understood. Afterwards, Gowie walked aside and called Gu Ning. When Gu Ning received Gaoyi's call, she had just finished the meal with her friends, and they were talking about where to have fun next. Boss, I have something to talk to you in private, Gowie heard other people's voices from the phone and said. Hearing that, Gu Ning cocked her eyebrow, because she knew that it must be serious. Wait a second, Gu Ning said standing up, then walked to an interior room. All right, you can say it now, Gu Ning said. After that, Gowie told her what had happened to Black Cat. Vist and Velben, .cm for new updates. Hearing that, Gu Ning's eyes lit up. She needed people with great skills in fighting or kung fu right now, and a killer couldn't be a better choice. As for the person's character, she needed time to see it. Therefore, she didn't mind. In addition, she was also willing to meet Black Cat in person and told them to meet her at the Huangdang Hotel. When Gu Ning walked out, they already made a decision on where to have fun next, but Gu Ning had to leave. I'm sorry. I have to go deal with something important right now, so I won't join you. They were all disappointed that Gu Ning would be absent, but they understood that Gu Ning was very busy. Since Gu Ning wouldn't go with them, Ling Xiaoting wouldn't either. They went to a tea room after their friends were gone. Ling Xiaoting didn't ask what Gu Ning was going to deal with, but clasped her in his arms the second the waiter was out. He lowered his head to her neck and rubbed her collarbone with the top of his nose. Stop now. They'll be here soon. Gu Ning pushed Ling Xiaoting away. They were in a public place. Ling Xiaoting, however, put on an innocent face. He loosened his arms and looked down at her saying in an aggrieved tone, I just want to hug you, that's it. Gu Ning was amused, but didn't stop him from hugging her. She could use her jade eyes. If someone was coming, she would notice it first. Ups.at from n0/v/lbn/.co/m. Ling Xiaoting also stopped rubbing sexually against Gu Ning because he knew that they were in a public place. After a while, Ling Xiaoting let Gu Ning go and held her hand, walking to the tea table. He sat down and started to prepare cups of tea. In fact, they could let a tea master prepare the tea for them, but Ling Xiaoting chose to do the Kung Fu tea ceremony himself. "Oh, you know how to do the Kung Fu tea ceremony." Gu Ning was surprised seeing Ling Xiaoting's skilled actions. "Yeah, I learned it from my grandpa," Ling Xiaoting said. Ling Xiaoting prepared 2 cups of tea, and they began to enjoy it. A few minutes later, Gao Yi and the others arrived. Gu Ning told them the number of their tea room and told them to come over. Before long, they arrived and knocked on the door. "Come in," Gu Ning said. Gao Yi then pushed the door open, walking inside, followed by Xiaoya and Black Cat. In order to not be recognized by those who was chasing him, Black Cat was wearing a black cap and mask. "Boss." Gao Yi and Xiaoya greeted Gu Ning once they walked in. Black Cat hadn't asked Gao Yi whether his boss was a male or female, but he thought that the person must be an old and experienced person. When he followed Gao Yi and Xiaoya stepping inside, he had no idea that the young girl was their boss. Although he couldn't see Ling Xiaoting's face, he still sensed his air of pride and nobility. Black Cat understood that the young man wasn't simple at all. To him, however, Gu Ning looked just like a kind young girl who was stunning. Therefore, when he heard Gao Yi and Xiaoya call her their boss, he was shocked. In normal situations, most people would doubt Gu Ning, but Black Cat was different. He was astonished, but he never thought lightly of Gu Ning just because she was very young. On the contrary, Gu Ning left a deep impression on him since she was able to help Gao Yi and Xiaoya. Gao Yi and Xiaoya weren't ordinary people after all. If Gu Ning had the ability to get Gao Yi and Xiaoya to work for her, she must be unusually smart and powerful. Precisely because Gu Ning seemed like a normal young girl, he appreciated her more, because disguises were very important. Black Cat took off his cap and mask at once before he greeted Gu Ning. "Miss, it's very nice to meet you. My name's Black Cat." "Nice to meet you too. Please have a seat," Gu Ning said. She didn't think that she was better than him, but she still had an air of power. In order to convince Black Cat to work for her, she had to show her ability and power. Black Cat did feel her power, and held great respect for her. They were all seated at the table, but Ling Xiaoting never gave them a glance. Instead, he focused on the tea all the time. "Mr. Ling, may I help?" Xiaoya said. As Gu Ning's subordinate, she couldn't sit aside watching her boss's boyfriend preparing tea for them. Xiaoya was good at preparing tea as well. "Vas. As. No need," Ling Xiaoting said. Since he said that, Xiaoya didn't insist. "The condition is very simple. You must work for me as a useful assistant. I won't ask you to do illegal things. You just need to help me manage my companies and you'll be paid according to your ability," Gu Ning said. "That simple?" Black Cat asked and couldn't believe his ears. He felt like Gu Ning wasn't settling a deal with him, but was helping him. Not to mention the fact that he was still a killer being chased by other killers. Such a good job was a very big favor for normal people. To be specific, Gu Ning saved his life and also offered him a great job. Even though he was confident that he could survive being chased, he still wanted to live a normal life. Gu Ning smiled. "We value different things as the most important thing in our life. You want to get rid of the pursuers and live a normal life, while I needed a well-trained person to help me manage my company. We just cooperate to gain what we need." Gu Ning hit the point. However, even though Gu Ning had the intention to hire Black Cat, she wouldn't force him if he declined her offer. "Great, I'm willing to work for you," Black Cat said. In his eyes, there was no reason to reject such a great offer. He was a man with a strong sense of loyalty, and he had been chased by the killer organization just because he found out some dirty secrets about it. If it hadn't been for that, he would have been working as a professional killer as usual. Gu Ning, however, didn't end the deal right away, but added, "I also want your loyalty. You don't need to die for me, but just do your job well. Stay loyal to me and never stab me in the back. I disliked threatening others, but I think it's necessary to remind you that I hate betrayal the most. No matter who betrays me, he or she won't die in peace. Ning Ning, if he dares to betray you, I'll kill him for you," Ling Xiaoting suddenly said with a serious expression. Black Cat was scared, even Gao Yi and Xiaoya felt stressed. 1. The Gongfu tea ceremony or Kung Fu tea ceremony is a kind of Chinese tea ceremony, involving the ritual preparation and presentation of tea. At this moment, Black Cat saw a person of his kind, not because of the identity, but the air of aggression. He believed that this young man's hands had been stained by no less blood than his. The deal was settled, and Gu Ning called Kay at once. "Wipe a killer whose name is Black Cat off the wanted list," Gu Ning said. "Boss, are you going to hire all the killers on the list? Do you have a plan to establish a killer organization for yourself?" Kay joked. Gu Ning laughed, then said half seriously, "I think it's a good idea. Why don't you help me keep a close eye on the wanted list, and hire some killers for me?" "Are you serious?" Kay suddenly didn't know whether Gu Ning was being serious or not. He just made a joke, and it wasn't a good thing to establish a killer organization. "Well, I wasn't thinking of that, but I feel it's not a bad idea now. I'm not interested in a killer organization, but I think a guardian team will be enough." "Help me nail it," Gu Ning said with a serious look. "Aren't you afraid that it'll be dangerous if you hire too many killers?" Kay asked. Although it could stop killers on the wanted list from being chased to some extent by wiping their names off, it didn't mean that they were 100% safe afterwards. If Gu Ning hired too many killers, she could be the target of a killer organization. Everything profitable is risky. The business world is like a battlefield, and I don't want to be the prey, Gu Ning said. Gu Ning was just a young businesswoman without much experience, and she wasn't a threat to her peers yet, so everything went on well right now. However, if she wanted to be more successful, there was no doubt that she was going to face more challenges and risks. "Fine, you win. I'll keep an eye on it." Kay agreed with Gu Ning on what she had just said. After that, they hung up the call. Except for Ling Xiaoting, the others were all shocked by Gu Ning's new idea. It was very dangerous, but also important. She was going to face dangerous challenges and risks in the future anyway, so it would do her more good than harm if she had a guardian team to protect herself and those she cared about. "What's your real identity?" Gu Ning asked. "My real information has been written off, so I can't use it. The identity information of Ba Tianyang is unknown in the organization. This is the identity information of an orphan, and all the information is vague." Black Cat, who was Ba Tianyang, said. Each killer had many identities, but those weren't true. They just stole the identification of some dead people who hadn't been signed off yet. "Great, we'll call you Ba Tianyang from now on. You can follow Gao Yi to deal with some business, and I'll arrange other work for you after your name is wiped off," Gu Ning said. "Thanks," Ba Tianyang said. Since Ba Tianyang would follow Gao Yi for the following days, Gao Yi had to take care of him, but they could use the public money of Gu Ning's company. After telling Gao Yi to look after Ba Tianyang and reminding Xiaoya to go to Huafu Hills at 8 a.m. tomorrow, Gu Ning left with Ling Xiaoting. It wasn't early when they walked out, so they went to pick Gu Man up. Yang Ziqian invited Yuzi to watch a film together after dinner. This was the first time that they had met each other officially, so Yang Ziqian thought that Yuzi might decline his invitation. However, to his surprise, Yuzi agreed. The theater was in the shopping mall not far from the restaurant where they had dined together, so they directly walked there. When Yang Ziqian and Yuzi walked side by side, they felt like they were dating as a couple. Both of them felt nervous and excited. When they arrived at the box office, Yang Ziqian told Yuzi to wait for him and he went to buy the tickets. "Oh, isn't this Yuzi? She came here to watch a film too. I wonder who she came here with." Just as Yang Ziqian walked away, a man said unkindly. Yuzi looked over. It was a man who was around 25 years old with a young woman holding his arm by his side. "Yuzi? This name sounds so familiar," the young woman said. "She's Lin Tianyou's poor ex-girlfriend. We've talked about her before," the man said with disdain. Actually, the man wasn't from a family that was much richer than Lin Tianyou's, but he was much richer than normal people, so he was very arrogant. In addition, the man hadn't heard the news about Yuzi yet, otherwise he wouldn't dare to laugh at her. Hearing that, the young woman nodded, but still felt that she had seen or heard of Yuzi's name somewhere before. Yuzi planned to ignore the man, but the man wouldn't stop attacking her. "Yuzi, did you find yourself a rich boyfriend?" he asked, mocking Yuzi like she was a gold digger. In those rich second-generation heirs' eyes, a poor girl like Yuzi just wanted money from them. Hearing that, many people looked at him with obvious dislike. In fact, most people were hypocritical and realistic. When looking for a boyfriend or girlfriend, the majority would check the person's family background and appearance first. Yuzi was angry. However, before she could say something, a man interrupted her. "Do you think that Miss Yu doesn't deserve a rich man?" The man was exactly Yang Ziqian. Lord Yang, the man was shocked to see Yang Ziqian and changed his expression at once to flatter him. "What a coincidence! Well, I invited Miss Yu to watch a film together with me, but I'm very annoyed that she was humiliated by someone right in front of my face," Yang Ziqian said in a cold tone, then turned to Yuzi and apologized with sincerity. "Miss Yu, I'm so sorry about that. Read latest OVLS at nv/e/l/buy.com." Hearing that, the young man rounded his eyes in shock. "What? Yuzi came here with Yang Ziqian? Yang Ziqian invited her to watch a film together?" The young man couldn't believe that Yuzi, who was just an ordinary person, could hang out with Yang Ziqian, who was born in a super rich and powerful family. "It's fine." Yuzi didn't mind it. Although she was mad at the young man's words, she wouldn't blame Yang Ziqian for it. "Lord Yang, I had no idea that Miss Yu came here with you," the young man explained at once in fear. If he had known that Yuzi came here with Yang Ziqian, he wouldn't have dared to humiliate her. Even though his family was rich, it was barely comparable with the Yang family. "Oh, isn't that woman the designer of charm?" At this moment, someone recognized Yuzi. Hearing that, the young woman realized why she felt Yuzi looked so familiar. Yuzi was the designer of charm. "She is. I thought that she looked like Yuzi, but I didn't recognize her just then." "Charm? What charm? I haven't heard of it before. Do you know jade beauty jewelry?" "Yes, it's quite popular and fashionable these days." There were many pieces of news about jade beauty jewelry, so most people had heard of it, but its great fame overshadowed charm at the same time. Those who hadn't heard of charm was mostly because they hadn't watched the release conference of jade beauty jewelry and charm yet. You must have missed the release conference of jade beauty jewelry and charm. Both jade beauty jewelry and charm are owned by the same boss, and Miss Yu is the designer and a shareholder of charm. What? Jade Beauty Jewelry and Charm are owned by the same boss? If Miss Yu is the designer and a shareholder of Charm, she must be very rich herself. I don't think that there is anything wrong with it if she has a rich boyfriend. Exactly. I heard that Charm is always crowded these days. It's very profitable. The young man who had just humiliated Yuzi was totally shocked. Yuzi is the designer and a shareholder of Charm? Although he didn't know how popular or valuable the brand of Charm was, he had heard that Jade Beauty Jewelry was a high-end brand and its boss had a powerful network. In that case, Charm couldn't be cheap. To his astonishment, Yuzi became so rich within a short time. Let's go inside now, Yang Ziqian said to Yuzi, and ignored the young man. Sure, Yuzi said and followed Yang Ziqian walking inside. The young man felt quite embarrassed, and soon left. The young woman who came here with him just shrugged. She felt ashamed too after the young man made himself a joke in a public place. Once they left, the young man called Lin Tianyu. Tianyu, do you know what Yuzi is doing now? The young man asked. Lin Tianyu, who was drinking alone in a bar, frowned. Although he knew what his friend was asking about, he still asked, "What do you mean?" She's the designer and a shareholder of Charm, the young man said. Oh, I'm aware of that, Lin Tianyu said. Do you know that she's hanging out with Yang Ziqian? The young man asked again. What? She's hanging out with Yang Ziqian? Lin Tianyu was surprised. I just went to a cinema and ran into them, the young man said, but he didn't actually know their relationship. Lin Tianyu felt quite displeased when he heard that Yuzi was hanging out with a man who was a super rich heir from the high society. He was very jealous and regretful now. He was reluctant to give up, and made up his mind to get Yuzi back by hook or by crook. Thinking of that, Lin Tianyu began losing his reason. Gu Ning stayed in the Tang family's house for a while, then brought Gu Man back to Huafu Hills. Because Gu Man would be gone for many days, Tang Yunfan didn't want to see her leaving, but he couldn't stop her. Not only Tang Yunfan, Gu Man didn't want to leave either, but she had to go back to take care of their beauty salon. On the way back to Huafu Hills, Gu Ning asked Gu Man, "Mom, how is everything going now between you and him?" Only. Gu Man flushed a little with a happy smile, which proved everything. Not bad, Gu Man said. Gu Ning understood that Gu Man was still hesitating to make the decision. Do you think that you can fully accept him now? Are you willing to marry him and spend the rest of your life with him? Gu Ning asked. Well, Gu Man hesitated. It seemed that Gu Ning had to do something to help them, so she said, "If you're not willing to marry him, forget it." I didn't say that. Gu Man retorted at once, in case Gu Ning took it seriously. Ha ha. Gu Ning laughed, and Gu Man realized that Gu Ning was just kidding. She flushed red and said, "How can you do that? I'm your mother. I'm just worried that you're not willing to do it. If so, we don't need to waste time here, right?" Gu Ning said in an aggrieved tone. Gu Man didn't know what to say, because she knew that Gu Ning cared about her. Once the Tang family overcomes the crisis, it's time to deal with your marriage, Gu Ning said. Gu Man flushed again, and turned to look outside of the window. When they got home, it was almost 10:30 p.m., and Gu Man went to take a shower before going to bed. However, it was still early for Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting, so they stayed in the living room watching TV. Gu Ning was watching TV, but Leng Xiaoting was staring at her the entire time. Why are you staring at me all the time? I just want to, Leng Xiaoting said, and leaned in to kiss her, but Gu Ning avoided it at once. What are you doing? My mom is home. Just a kiss, Leng Xiaoting said with an innocent face. No, what if my mom comes out all of a sudden? Gu Ning refused. I think that we're sharp-eyed enough to discover it in time, Lin Xiaoting said. It was obvious that he couldn't wait a second longer. Even so, Gu Ning still didn't dare to do it and said, we can never be too careful. If my mom catch you doing that, she'll have a bad impression of you, and probably forbid me to be with you anymore. Hearing that, Lin Xiaoting was nervous, and sat back upright without hesitation. I can't wait till tomorrow when your mother is back in City F, Lin Xiaoting said with burning desire in his eyes. Gu Ning glared at him and was amused. When Yuzi and Yang Ziqian finished watching the film and walked out, it was 10:30 p.m., so Yang Ziqian drove Yuzi home. Read latest OVLS at nv/e/l/buy.com. Although Yuzi had already bought a house, it was still being furnished, so she lived in a rented apartment for now. The moment Yang Ziqian heard where Yuzi lived, he was concerned. It isn't safe there. Are you sure you'll be fine living there? I just bought a new house, but it's still being furnished, so I have to live there for the time being, Yuzi said. Since she said so, Yang Ziqian didn't say anything further on the topic, because they weren't very familiar yet. Oh, I watched the release conference. Did you establish charm yourself? Yang Ziqian asked and changed the topic. Yeah. It's been established for over a year, but wasn't profitable until my boss invested in it, Yuzi said with a grateful expression. I love your designs, and I think they are as good as those famous masters. You just need some fame, Yang Ziqian said. It was the truth that people nowadays would only pay for fame. Once charm became popular along with Jade Beauty jewelry, its flagship store was crowded every day. Yuzi, however, felt a little embarrassed. Mr. Yang, thank you so much for your appreciation, but I still think that I have a lot to learn from those masters. I'm telling the truth, and I believe in you, Yang Ziqian said with a serious face. Thanks, Yuzi said. Yang Ziqian didn't leave until Yuzi went back into her apartment and turned on the lights. Coincidentally, Yang Ziqian also lived in Huafu Hills not far from Gu Ning. When he got back home, Mrs. Yang asked him curiously, how was it? Everything went well, and I think she's a good girl, but I don't know her impression of me, Yang Ziqian said. Do you need me to ask her for you? Mrs. Yang asked. Please don't. It's just the first meeting, we can take it slow, Yang Ziqian said. He was afraid that his mother would put too much pressure on them. Fine. Mrs. Yang also understood that it was their personal affairs. If you think that she's a good girl, seize every chance to chase her. All right, I understand, Yang Ziqian said before going upstairs. It would take time for them to get along with each other after all. Chao Wenxin and her friends were also leaving for home. However, just as she stood up, she stumbled and fell into Xian Bei and kissed his lips by accident. In an instant, both of them rounded their eyes in shock, and they felt their hearts beating fast at the same time. The others around them were also astonished. Jesus, Xian Bei had a forced kiss. Su Jinchen exclaimed in excitement. Su Jinchen's voice separated them at once. To be specific, it was Chao Wenxin who pushed Xian Bei away. Xian Bei, on the other hand, felt a little disappointed. However, when she stood up, she fell again and pressed on Xian Bei's body. Wenxin, are you all right? Qiu Yusin wanted to help her up, but was stopped by Si Ming. It's fine. They need a good chance to get closer to each other. Hearing that, Qiu Yusin stood still. They all noticed that there was a very real chemistry between them, but neither of them confessed their affection to each other, so they needed a little help. Therefore, nobody else in the private room went ahead to help Chao Wenxin up, except for Xian Bei. Although Xian Bei was unwilling to let Chao Wenxin leave his arms, they weren't a couple after all, so it wasn't appropriate. After being supported by Xian Bei, Chao Wenxin flushed red and didn't dare to meet Xian Bei's eyes. Xian Bei felt uneasy as well. Xian Bei, why don't you send Wenxin home? Su Jinchen said. It was obvious that he was giving them a chance to spend some alone time together. No, thanks, Chao Wenxin declined subconsciously, not because she didn't want Xian Bei to send her home, but because she felt too embarrassed to face Xian Bei now. Are you sure? It's very late now, and it isn't safe if you take a taxi home, Su Jinchen interrupted Chao Wenxin before she could finish her sentence. Xian Bei is the only one who hasn't drunk too much, so he is the only one who can drive you home. After that, Su Jinchen walked out at once. He had drunk a lot and felt like sleeping now. The others all left without delay, and only Chao Wenxin and Xian Bei stayed in the room. Chao Wenxin opened her mouth, but didn't know what to say. In addition, there was no one who wanted to hear it, so she could only close her mouth. Find new stories on nov/elbin.com. Do you really hate me? Xian Bei asked all of a sudden, feeling hurt and sad. Of course not. Chao Wenxin denied it at once. She didn't hate him. Instead, she liked him now, which was the reason why she felt so shy. However, she couldn't say it aloud. Well, then let's go. Chao Wenxin stood up walking out. Seeing Chao Wenxin almost escaping, Xian Bei wore an evil smile, but didn't say anything. However, before Xian Bei caught up with Chao Wenxin, a man stopped her. Wenxin, what a coincidence! Come on, come have some fun in my private room. The man seemed kind, but Chao Wenxin frowned with hatred. Get out of my way. Don't be so aggressive. She told you to get out of her way. Xian Bei strode to Chao Wenxin's side and coldly looked at the man. Who are you? It's none of your business. The man was very arrogant. Xian Bei ignored him and pulled Chao Wenxin, walking ahead. The man, however, wasn't willing to give up. He grabbed Chao Wenxin's other hand. Chao Wenxin tried in vain to get rid of his hand, her face covered with an expression of strong dislike. The next second, Xian Bei caught the man's wrist and squeezed it with great force. The man felt great pain and let go of Chao Wenxin's hand. He stared at Xian Bei with an angry face. How dare you hurt me? Do you know who I am? I was born in the Xie family. The man was named Xie Dongyan. He was the son of a relatively super-rich family in City B, and only a few people dared to annoy him. Chao Wenxin was an exception. Not only did she dare to annoy him, but she also dared to punch him. Even so, he admired Chao Wenxin and would approach her every time he saw her. Xie Dongyan knew some fighting skills, so he was able to protect himself to some extent, although he couldn't win a fight with Chao Wenxin. I don't care who you are, but I'll beat you if you dare to harass Wenxin. Xian Bei said. He didn't seem scared at all, but was quite protective of Chao Wenxin now. At this moment, Chao Wenxin enjoyed the feeling of being protected by a strong man, and her hatred toward Xie Dongyan was soon replaced by happiness. She hoped that this feeling could last forever. Most men cared about saving face very much. So after being caught and hurt by Xian Bei, Xie Dongyan was in a rage because he thought that it damaged his dignity as a man. When he saw Chao Wenxin showing happiness because of the strong and handsome man in front of him, he was even angrier and lost control of himself. At short notice, he clenched his fist and tried to punch Xian Bei. Xian Bei was a well-trained soldier in the special forces, so it was impossible that Xie Dongyan could hurt him. Xie Dongyan caught Xie Dongyan's fist within a second, then turned to ask Chao Wenxin, "Can I beat him?" Xian Bei ached to punch him, but he was afraid that it might cause Chao Wenxin trouble. Of course, Chao Wenxin said with obvious hatred in her eyes. The second Chao Wenxin finished her sentence, Xian Bei dislocated Xie Dongyan's arm with a clear sound. Xie Dongyan shouted in pain and his face turned pale at once. Although his arm could easily be placed back to its normal position in the joint, it was still super painful when it was dislocated. Besides, it wasn't something that everyone could do, so they would have to turn to an orthopedist for help. It would be really painful for him before he found a good doctor. Therefore, Xian Bei left with Chao Wenxin after just dislocating his arm. Before they left, Chao Wenxin stared straight at Xie Dongyan saying coldly, "Xie Dongyan, if you dare to harass me again, I'll beat you down to the floor." "Lord Xia, are you all right?" A waiter walked over when Chao Wenxin and Xian Bei were gone. "Do you think that I'm all right now? Go find my brothers in private room V08 and tell them to come here right now." Xie Dongyan roared in anger. Couldn't the waiter see that he was in great pain right now? Sure. The waiter was frightened, then ran to private room V08 to tell Xie Dongyan's friends. Before long, 3 men walked over, and they were all surprised when they saw Xie Dongyan's arm. "Lord Xia, what happened?" "Someone dislocated my arm," Xie Dongyan said in a cold tone with an angry face. "What? Who dared to hurt you?" "We'll kill him for you," a man said. "Exactly," the other 2 men agreed. "Take me to the hospital first," Xie Dongyan said. He felt like he was dying. Hearing that, they realized that it was the most important thing to do now, so they helped Xie Dongyan walk out. They weren't doctors, so they had to go to the hospital. Xian Bei drove Chao Wenxin back to Huafu Hills. "It seems like you really hate that man." "Why?" Xian Bei asked. He could tell that the man admired Chao Wenxin, and he wasn't happy about that, even though Chao Wenxin disliked him. "Yeah, the man is called Xie Dongyan, and he was born in the Xie family in City B. He was the boyfriend of one of my friends, but he said that he only became my friend's boyfriend to get close to me. My friend was really hurt and moved abroad. Although she didn't blame me for it, she never contacted me again. I hate Xie Dongyan because of that. If he keeps a distance from me, it's fine, but I'll punch him if he annoys me. However, once on shore one prays no more, and he's repeatedly harassed me," Chao Wenxin said, and her voice was full of hatred towards Xie Dongyan and guilt for her friend. Although it wasn't Chao Wenxin's fault, it had something to do with her after all, so she still felt guilty. Chao Wenxin never liked Xie Dongyan, but Xian Bei thought that Xie Dongyan must love her very much, otherwise he wouldn't have repeatedly approached her even though he knew that she would punch him. Therefore, Xian Bei felt a little bitter. When they arrived at the gate of the house, Chao Wenxin was ready to get out. "Wait a second." Xian Bei stopped her all of a sudden. "What?" Chao Wenxin turned to ask him, but he suddenly kissed her. Chao Wenjun rounded her eyes in shock, seeing his handsome face right in front of her eyes. Her mind went blank at this moment. Xian Bei was also astonished by his passionate move, but he didn't let her go, because he enjoyed the taste of her soft lips. Get latest CHPTers on nve.lbj/n.c/m. It was obvious that Chao Wenxin enjoyed it as well, so she didn't resist at all. Xian Bei pushed his tongue past her teeth and into her mouth. She didn't push him away until she was out of breath. Xian Bei wasn't prepared, so he was easily pushed away, and realized what he had just done. Seeing Chao Wenxin in a panic, Xian Bei got nervous and felt guilty. Wenxin, He lost control of himself. He liked her and he wanted to be with her. Before Xian Bei could say another word, Chao Wenxin opened the car door and was about to leave, but was stopped by Xian Bei again. "Wenxin. What?" Chao Wenxin's body and voice trembled a little, and she didn't have the courage to look back at Xian Bei. I can be very busy or free with my job. When I'm very busy, you probably won't hear from me for more than half a month, but I can have a break of nearly a week when I'm free. I like you. If you don't mind my job, could you please give me a chance? Xian Bei confessed his affection for Chao Wenxin. Hearing that, Chao Wenxin's heart began to race. She was very excited, but also wanted to escape. You, let me go. I need to go home now. Chao Wenxin didn't answer Xian Bei's question, although she wanted to. She wasn't sure whether she really liked Xian Bei, and she had never had a boyfriend before, so she felt timid. You haven't answered my question yet. Xian Bei wouldn't let her go. Chao Wenxin stammered. What? Xian Bei moved closer to her and his warm breath was right by Chao Wenxin's ear. She ached to escape right now, but had nowhere to do so. Leave me alone. Chao Wenxin turned around to push him, but she felt aroused all of a sudden when her hands touched his strong chest, and she drew them back at once in fear. You don't like me at all? Xian Bei asked and felt really hurt. Of course not. Chao Wenxin denied it subconsciously, but felt more embarrassed once she blurted it out. However, she didn't know how to explain it now. Xian Bei was cheered up hearing her answer, but he wanted a clearer one. Since you denied it, why don't you tell me directly whether you like me or not? Right when Chao Wenxin stammered again, Xian Bei's phone rang, and Chao Wenxin felt quite relieved. It seemed that she dodged the bullet. However, Xian Bei had no intention to answer the call, which surprised Chao Wenxin. Don't you hear your phone ringing? Yeah, Xian Bei said, but didn't bother to answer it. He had set a special ringtone for all the important numbers, but this ringtone wasn't it, so it wasn't an important call. Why don't you pick it up? Chao Wenxin was confused. Your answer is more important, Xian Bei said. It was something sweeter than sweet nothings, and Chao Wenxin felt touched. I'll give you the answer tomorrow. How about that? Chao Wenxin knew that she couldn't escape this time and decided to face it. I'll be going back to the capital tomorrow, Xian Bei said. Hearing that, Chao Wenxin was disappointed, although she already knew about it. Chao Wenxin insisted on giving Xian Bei the answer tomorrow, so Xian Bei agreed. He couldn't wait to hear the answer, but he knew that it would take time for Chao Wenxin to accept him. After that, Chao Wenxin got out of the car and escaped back to her house. Seeing Chao Wenxin walking into her house, Xian Bei took out his phone and checked the caller. The caller was Xian Chen. Hey, why did you call me so late? Xian Bei asked. Why didn't you tell us that you're in City B now? Your sister-in-law just saw you in the video of the opening ceremony of Jade Beauty Jewelry. Xian Chen complained. Well, I've been with my friends these past few days, and I'm going back to my team tomorrow. I'll visit you next time, Xian Bei said. How is everything going between you and Wenxin? Xian Chen asked with concern, because he had noticed Chao Wenxin standing right by Xian Bei's side at the opening ceremony of Jade Beauty Jewelry in the video. Nothing new. I'll tell you if I have any good news, Xian Bei said. All right. Xian Chen said, then hung up. Xian Bei gave the house a glance before he drove away. In the house, Chao Wenxin was actually standing by the window, watching Xian Bei's car driving away. She couldn't help thinking of the kiss, and her heart was beating fast. That night, Chao Wenxin didn't sleep at all, neither did Xian Bei. Both of them were thinking of each other. The next day, Xian Bei woke up at 7 a.m. and sent a message to Chao Wenxin. Xian Bei, may I know your answer? He didn't receive Chao Wenxin's reply after a long while and thought that she was probably still sleeping, so he stopped texting her in case it woke her up. Chao Wenxin indeed didn't see his message because she was still sleeping. She didn't fall asleep last night until it was almost daybreak. Around 7:40 a.m., Xiaoya arrived at Huafu Hills. Discover W stories on no/e/lbin.com. Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting sent Gu Man along with Xiaoya to the airport at 8 a.m. At the same time, Su Jinchen, Xian Bei and Si Ming were about to leave for the airport too. They didn't have as much free time as Leng Xiaoting, who was their team leader, and they had to stay in the military base even if there was no task. Xian Bei still didn't receive Chao Wenxin's reply after waiting for a while longer. Just when he was ready to call her, he got a message from her. Chao Wenxin, I'll answer you when we meet next time. In fact, Chao Wenxin indirectly admitted that she liked Xian Bei. Reading the message, Xian Bei didn't want to leave all of a sudden, but he had to. Xian Bei, sure, I can wait. At the airport, Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting walked Gu Man to the lounge before they left for the hospital. Tang Yinrong and Tang Yinhang were going to attend the meeting at the company, so there was only Jiang Lihua in the ward together with some security guards. At the same time, Feng Shuiqin, who just got up, received a call and heard the news that Gu Man was leaving City B for City F while Gu Ning was absent. Hearing that, Feng Shuiqin was thrilled because it was a great chance. Very well. Follow her to City F right away. If Gu Ning is absent, it'll be easier to catch Gu Man. Feng Shuiqin said in a malicious tone. Yes, ma'am. In a meeting room, 8 directors sat across from each other at a table. Quan Mingkai, as the secretary of the chairman, was sitting in the head seat. Tang Yinfan was still unconscious, so he wasn't able to attend this meeting, so he would be attending on behalf of Tang Yinfan before they elected a new chairman. However, he could only attend this meeting of the board of directors and put forward suggestions. He couldn't make a decision. There is something wrong with our proposal with a company from country Y, and the representatives of our partner will come here to deal with it at 2 p.m. Before that, I think that we better have the best solution to this problem, Quan Mingkai said. I agree with Secretary Quan, but our business group lacks a leader right now and I'm afraid that it's not easy to solve the problem without a leader, Tang Deming said. It was obvious that he wanted to elect a new chairman before talking about the deal. Exactly. Chairman Tang and Master Tang are both unconscious now. How can we persuade them to cooperate with us? Fu Kaiyu said. It was an accident, which caused Chairman Tang's unconsciousness, Tang Jilin argued. They won't care about that. Businessmen only value benefits. Even though Yunhang is the secretary of the Municipal Party Committee, our business partner is a foreigner, and it won't work, Tang Deming said. Do you mean that we have to elect a new chairman to solve this problem? Tang Yinhang said with a strong air of power, and the others all felt quite stressed all of a sudden. However, they didn't retreat from their plan. I didn't say that. Well, if you're confident to settle the deal this afternoon, it's fine not to elect a new chairman right now, Tang Deming said. It seemed that Tang Deming was more confident than Tang Yinhang. And your opinions? Tang Yinhang asked Qing Zhongxing and Wu Boyan, who had remained silent the entire time. I support the plan, which is good for the group's development, Qing Zhongxing said. Yes, we're all businessmen, and we need to look after our own interests as well, Wu Boyan said. Even though they were neutral, Tang Deming's plan was more beneficial according to the situation now. Oh, then who do you think is capable to take the position? Tang Yinhang asked again. Tang Yinhang, as the secretary of Municipal Party Committee of City B, could be a shareholder of a corporation, but he couldn't be its chairman at the same time. The same thing went for Tang Yinrong as well, because she had a title in the military. Although they could resign their jobs, it took several days to do that. Therefore, neither of them could be the new chairman of their family's business right now. Tang Deming knew that very well, which was part of the reason why he dared to force them to agree with him. In fact, Tang Deming was also worried that they would transfer their shares to a member of the Tang family. No matter who has the ability, he can take the position, Wu Boyan said. Speaking of business ability, only Tang Jilin and Tang Deming were better than the others. Since it's about ability, shouldn't we work together to solve this problem first so that we can see who is most capable of taking the job? Tang Yunhang said. Hearing that, Tang Deming squinted. Tang Yunhang was indeed cunning. Since Tang Yunhang said that, he had to give up for now in case it did him harm if he insisted. Tang Deming obviously knew that the Tang family was aware of his ambition, but he didn't care about it, because the Tang family couldn't fire him just because of his ambition. He hadn't done anything to hurt the Tang family's business yet after all. If the Tang family fired him without a reasonable reason, it would damage the reputation of the corporation. Actually, in addition to Tang Yunfan and Tang Haifang, Tang Jiayang was also a potential businessman in the Tang family. Although he was still young and lacked experience, he could improve that by putting his knowledge into practice. If he took over Tang Huang Group right now, it would be hard for him to run the business well, but Quan Mingkai and Yan Weiluan would assist him. Either Quan Mingkai or Yan Weiluan was capable of being the new chairman of Tang Huang Group, because they had helped Tang Yunfan build it throughout the past years. Besides, they had overcome many crises together. Therefore, even though nobody in the Tang family had the ability to take the position, the Tang family would give the job to Quan Mingkai or Yan Weiluan instead of someone else. If they hadn't had the plan to find out who the mastermind behind the scheme was, they wouldn't have allowed Tang Deming's group to discuss it with them at this meeting. After that, they began to talk about the proposal. The technology company under the name of Tang Huang Group and technology company G of Country Y had agreed to develop an antivirus security system together. However, right when they were about to launch it, another research and development team did it before them. That being the case, technology company G was suspicious that someone in Tang Huang Group had leaked the proposal, and vice versa. Although they weren't the only teams who knew how to develop an antivirus security system, and it wasn't surprising that other R&D teams did that, the problem was that the security system the other R&D team had launched was almost exactly the same as theirs. What was worse, the system was even upgraded based on theirs to some extent. Either way, they couldn't launch theirs since another team had already launched it. However, if they stopped researching and developing right now because of that, both companies would suffer a great loss. Read lat.stchers on n/v/l/b.i.cm. Since someone leaked the confidential proposal, that person had to take responsibility for it, otherwise the company had to pay for it. Tang Huang Group could bear the result, but technology company G couldn't. However, even though Tang Huang Group could afford it, nobody was willing to waste hundreds of millions of yuan. N was CA. If this problem was caused by Tang Huang Group, Tang Yunhang and the others believed that it must have been Tang Deming's fault. However, they lacked evidence to prove it. Since Tang Deming dared to do that, he must be confident that nobody would find out. Although the Tang family was very powerful, Tang Deming believed that he would be safe as long as he was careful enough. Moreover, he hadn't leaked the proposal in person, so it was useless to suspect him. Technology company G believes that it isn't their fault, so we must reflect on ourselves, Quan Mingkai said, and glanced around the directors by the table with his sharp eyes. It's still a doubt, and we must investigate each other, and the investigation in our company has already begun. Tang Deming knew very well that he was under suspicion now, but he didn't panic at all. Instead, he put on an expression like he was worried about the company. The company's loss is our loss. That meant that it was impossible that he had leaked the proposal. Others all knew that Tang Deming was very economical, so they didn't doubt his words. They obviously didn't know the real reason behind the accidents which had happened to Tang Yunfan and Tang Haifeng. It was already clear that Tang Deming had caused the car accident which had caught Tang Yunfan. No matter what the result will be, we've damaged our relationship with technology company G, and I'm afraid that our previous cooperation will be ended too, Fu Kaiyu said. Right, and we'll suffer another loss if so, Wu Boyan said. I don't think technology company G will make that impulsive decision, because they'll suffer a loss too, Tang Julin said. If they have leaked the proposal, they won't do it out of guilt, but I think that they'll do it if someone in our company has leaked the proposal, because they can have compensation in that case. Qing Zhongxing analyzed. I agree. As long as technology company E of country Y refuses to admit that it's plagiarism, they can win support from the market given that their system is better. Technology company E was precisely the company which had launched the security system before them. Exactly. I think that we'll suffer a great loss no matter what the result is. It wasn't a successful meeting, and they couldn't do anything before the investigation result was out. All they could do now was to wait for their meeting with technology company G. Around 12 a.m., the meeting was over, and Tang Yunhang along with Tang Yunrong went to the hospital together. Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting were still there, and they just finished having lunch with Tang Haifeng. They stayed in order to ask Tang Yunrong and Tang Yunhang about the result of the meeting. They were very sure that it must have something to do with Tang Deming, but they didn't know which technology company was working with him. What was worse, both technology company G and technology company E could be used by Tang Deming. Gu Ning told Kay to hack the two technology companies to search for some clues, but she wasn't very hopeful, because Kay could be tracked soon after he hacked into their databases given both of the companies were technology companies. She was right. Within several minutes, Kay called her back and told her that he was tracked by them within a minute. Gu Ning didn't know what else to do either, and they could only make the next step according to the new situation. No matter which technology company was working with Tang Deming, they had to be well prepared. If technology company G was working with Tang Deming, they must have arranged someone to leak the proposal on purpose. The source of this content n/o/v/l/n. Around 12:20 p.m., Gu Man and Xiaoya were back in City F. They called Gu Ning and told her that they were safe once they got off the plane. However, they were stalked the moment they walked out of the airport. Xiaoya noticed it first, but didn't tell Gu Man, in case she got nervous and anxious. They took a taxi and headed to the beauty salon. When they entered the city center and waited for the traffic light to turn green, Gu Man saw a dirty-faced, not well-dressed woman pushed to the ground by a man in front of a breakfast shop on the roadside. He was punching and kicking her. Gu Man felt very sorry for her, but didn't do anything, because it was not her duty to help every poor person. However, when the taxi was about to move ahead, Gu Man suddenly saw the woman's face. To her astonishment, the woman was Lin Lijuan. Gu Man could never imagine that Lin Lijuan would be like this. Although she had the worst relationship with Lin Lijuan, they were relatives after all, and she didn't have the heart to watch her being beaten by a man on the street. Therefore, Gu Man told the driver to stop. The driver stopped the car by the road, but it wasn't a place where he could stop a car for long, so Xiaoya paid him before he left. Xiaoya didn't ask why Gu Man did that, because she just needed to protect Gu Man well. Stop it! Gu Man ran to them without delay. The man heard her voice and stopped. What's going on here? Gu Man asked. She stole my steamed buns, and dirted many. The man was angry. How much are they? I can pay you, Gu Man said. However, before the man could say a word, Xiaoya opened her mouth. He's beaten this woman, and I think that is enough to pay the bill. It wasn't about money, but Xiaoya was unwilling to pay the man after he had beaten the woman. The man wanted the money in the beginning, but felt embarrassed to take it after hearing what Xiaoya said. All right, forget it. After that, he turned and walked back to his shop. Lin Lijuan was kneeling on the ground on her knees and elbows, but protected the steamed buns in her hands very well although she had been beaten. Gu Man felt very sad seeing Lin Lijuan like this. Although she hated her very much, she still had deep sympathy for her. Lijuan, what happened to you? Gu Man squatted down beside her. Right when Gu Man's hand touched Lin Lijuan yelled in fear, "Don't grab my steamed buns away." Saying that, Lin Lijuan swallowed the steamed buns down in chunks. It seemed that she was afraid that someone would grab them away if she couldn't eat them right away. Well, Gu Man was shocked by Lin Lijuan's reaction and realized that there was something wrong with Lin Lijuan's mental condition. "Ma'am, I think she has a mental problem," Xiaoya said. "A mental problem?" Gu Man was surprised. "I won't grab your steamed buns away. Do you want to eat delicious food?" "I can take you to have some," Gu Man said. "Really?" Lin Lijuan raised her head to look at Gu Man. Her eyes were very bright and seemed innocent. She didn't recognize Gu Man at all. She wasn't in a normal mental condition now, and had the same level of intelligence as a kid. What had she been through? What was Gu Qingxiang doing now? Gu Man was worried. "Yes, of course," Gu Man said. "Hooray!" Lin Lijuan got back to her feet at once. Even if someone sold her for money, Lin Lijuan wouldn't know what happened to her. Gu Man saw a nearby barber shop and said to Xiaoya, "Xiaoya, I'll take her to wash her hair. Can you help me buy a set of clothing for her?" Gu Man wasn't carrying a suitcase, so she didn't have any clothes to share with Lin Lijuan. "Ma'am, since Miss Gu told me to protect you, you must be in a dangerous situation, so I can't leave you alone. We can take her to wash her hair first, then buy some clothing for her." Xiaoya thought of the person who was stalking them along the way. "Fine." Gu Man agreed. After that, Xiaoya and Gu Man took Lin Lijuan to the nearby barber shop. When the hairdresser saw Lin Lijuan, who was filthy, he felt disgusted, but there was no reason for him to reject the chance to make money. In the beginning, Lin Lijuan was resistant, because she didn't know what she was doing. Gu Man had to persuade her to wash her hair first before they went to eat delicious food, and she also stayed by Lin Lijuan's side the entire time. Lin Lijuan finally accepted it in the end. When the hairdresser was washing Lin Lijuan's hair, Gu Man called Gu Qingxiang. Gu Qingxiang was very surprised that Gu Man would call him again. "What?" Gu Qingxiang asked and sounded normal. "Did you divorce Lin Lijuan?" Gu Man asked. If they were already divorced, she couldn't send Lin Lijuan back to Gu Qingxiang's place. "Not yet," Gu Qingxiang said. "She's already back to the Lin family's place now though." Hearing that, Gu Man frowned. "Since you and Lin Lijuan haven't divorced yet, I think I better tell you the truth right now. I ran into her on a street, but she's filthy and has a mental problem." "What?" Gu Qingxiang was shocked. "Why?" Gu Qingxiang didn't love Lin Lijuan anymore, but he still had a family relationship with her, which was the reason why he never had the idea to divorce her even though he had mistresses. Not to mention the fact that they hadn't divorced yet. Even if they had, Gu Qingxiang would still do something after hearing about Lin Lijuan's condition now. "Where are you right now?" "I'll be right there," Gu Qingxiang asked. "We're in a barber shop on XX Road, and the hairdresser is washing Lin Lijuan's hair now. We'll take her to buy new clothes before we go to eat something," Gu Man said. "We will probably be done after half an hour. Why don't you come to pick us up?" Sure, I'll be right there," Gu Qingxiang said, and left his company at once. Half an hour later, Lin Lijun had her hair and face washed, and Gu Qingxiang arrived at the same time. After being through a hard time, Gu Qingxiang became much more friendly. When he met Gu Man again, he wasn't so arrogant as usual at all, and even seemed a little submissive. Gu Qingxiang had aged a lot during this hard time, and he was busy dealing with the crisis of his company. However, it seemed that his company was doomed to bankruptcy. He felt too embarrassed to ask Gu Man for money now, because he didn't know whether Gu Man was willing to help him. Besides, even if he got the money, it would soon be consumed if he failed to strike a business deal. Gu Man, at the same time, didn't bother to ask how everything was going in Gu Qingxiang's life. When Gu Qingxiang saw Lin Lijun, he frowned, but didn't show any disdain. Lijun, Gu Qingxiang called her, but Lin Lijun didn't have any reactions, because she had already forgotten her name. She doesn't know anyone, nor who she is right now. Let's go buy some new clothing for her before we take her to eat some food. Gu Man said. Sure, Gu Qingxiang said, and went to support Lin Lijun with his hands, but Lin Lijun was scared and hid behind Gu Man's back at once. Gu Qingxiang didn't know what to do, so he turned around and walked out, followed by them. They got in the car, and left for a shopping mall. On the way, Gu Man didn't talk with Gu Qingxiang. What had happened to Lin Lijun was something Gu Qingxiang should figure out himself. They soon arrived at the shopping mall, and took Lin Lijun to buy some new clothes for her. Gu Qingxiang lacked money now, so they went to a normal clothing shop. If Gu Qingxiang wasn't here, Gu Man would pay for Lin Lijun, but since he was here now, he would pay the bill himself. However, Gu Man didn't mind paying the bill when they went to share a meal together later. Oh, isn't this Mrs. Gu? Didn't you hate such a normal clothing shop before? Why did you suddenly come here to buy clothes? The moment Lin Lijun walked out from a changing room, a woman said in an unkind tone. Lin Lijun, however, had no reaction at all, because she didn't know that the woman was laughing at her. Gu Man and Xiaoya turned to look at the woman. She was around 40 years old and was dressed in normal clothing and had the same mean expression as Lin Lijun did in the old days. There was another woman of the same age as her by her side. When she didn't hear a response from Lin Lijun, the woman was displeased and added, Lin Lijun, I feel so sorry for you now. Your daughter is in jail, and your husband has cheated on you. Even his company is about to go bankrupt. I don't think you're qualified to make fun of me from now on. The woman sounded quite satisfied. She had known Lin Lijun for many years, and Lin Lijun had shown off in front of her many times, so she never forgot her hatred towards Lin Lijun. If it hadn't been for the fact that she needed Lin Lijun's help, she would have argued with Lin Lijun a long time ago. In fact, this woman was also very ungrateful. Although Lin Lijun had despised her, Lin Lijun had helped her a lot after all. However, Lin Lijun was in a bad condition now, so she came to humiliate Lin Lijun in a public place. Jealousy could easily distort a person's mindset and made a person ungrateful at the same time. Hearing the woman's loud voice, many people in the shop looked at Lin Lijun with sympathy or disdain. Gu Qingxiang, who was sitting on a sofa, felt ashamed and annoyed, but didn't know what to say, because he had cheated on Lin Lijun. Gu Qingxiang was reading a magazine, so the two women didn't notice him. They didn't know Gu Man or Xiaoya either, otherwise they wouldn't have been so arrogant. However, Lin Lijun still stood there with an expressionless face. Gu Man, on the other hand, couldn't stand it anymore. This lady, please mind your personal image and don't forget your manners. The woman felt a little embarrassed, but retorted at once, it's none of your business. I'm not talking about you. You don't have the right to judge another person either. Gu Man said. The woman was mad, but didn't know what to say. The other woman didn't want to cause a scene, so she pulled her and walked away. After the two women were gone, Gu Man's group also left. Gu Man took them to a restaurant and booked a private room before they started to order dishes. Gu Qingxiang called Lin Dekheng after ordering, trying to figure out what had happened to Lin Lijuan. What? Lin Dekheng sounded very aggressive. They had a bad relationship ever since Lin Dekheng found out that Gu Qingxiang had cheated on Lin Lijuan. Didn't Lijuan stay at your place? Why didn't you tell me that she left your house? Do you know that she's in a really terrible condition right now? Gu Qingxiang questioned in annoyance. What? Lin Dekheng was surprised, then remembered that he hadn't seen Lin Lijuan for a couple of days. What has happened to Lijuan? She has wandered on the street like a beggar and was being beaten by a man after stealing several steamed buns. She also has a mental problem now. If Gu Man hadn't found her by accident, I probably wouldn't find out until she died. Gu Qingxiang was angry. What? Lin Dekheng was shocked now and explained it at once. She left my house a few days ago without bringing her phone. I thought that she went to find her friends. Since Lin Dekheng said so, Gu Qingxiang couldn't blame him for everything. Lin Lijuan was an adult after all, and it was nobody's duty to take care of her like she was a baby. Was she in a normal mental condition when she left your house? Gu Qingxiang asked. Of course, or we wouldn't allow her to leave. Lin Dekheng argued. It sounded like Gu Qingxiang was blaming him because he didn't care about Lin Lijuan's life. He haven't taken good care of Lin Lijuan, but he wouldn't let Lin Lijuan leave the house if he knew that she had a mental problem. In addition, he had told Lin Yue how to find her that night when Lin Lijuan hadn't come back. Ariad updated estirise at n/vel/bin.com. Although Lin Dekheng was also displeased, he still wouldn't stand aside and do nothing since Lin Lijuan was in trouble now. I think she must have been through something before she got the mental problem. Why don't we call the police and check the surveillance cameras to see what happened to her? Sure, Gu Qingxiang said, then hung up. Lin Lijuan hadn't eaten a good meal for a few days, so she started to stuff her mouth with food and quickly swallowed once the dishes were on the table. After the meal, they went to the hospital together to check Lin Lijuan's health. However, the result shocked everyone. There were obvious bruises on Lin Lijuan's body and some tears in her vagina. It was obvious that she had been sexually assaulted. Her head had also been heavily hit several times, which damaged her nerves and caused the decline of her intelligence. She was now inclined to suffer from dementia. It was hard to tell whether she could be cured, but it wasn't very likely. Gu Man felt sorry for the fact that Lin Lijuan had been sexually assaulted, but Gu Qingxiang was too shocked to accept it. He thought of a divorce, but Lin Lijuan would die if he abandoned her again, because the Lin family obviously wouldn't be willing to support her given her condition now. She was his children's mother after all. After thinking for a long while, Gu Qingxiang gave up the idea. He decided to hire a nurse to take care of Lin Lijuan. At least she wouldn't be homeless. Gu Qingxiang was still really shocked and wasn't able to drive his car, so Qiaoye drove them directly to the police station. Although it would expose Lin Lijuan's horrible experience, they couldn't allow the rapist to get away with it. Zhuang Tianman was a beautiful new policewoman working in this police station. When Gu Man's group arrived, her eyes lit up at once and ran to them in excitement. Hey, are you Goddess Gu, Gu Ning's mother? Zhuang Tianman asked, although she already had the answer. She addressed Gu Ning as Goddess Gu first, but changed it in case Gu Man didn't know who she was talking about. Zhuang Tianman became a policewoman because she had a strong sense of justice and wanted to protect the weak from violence. She also liked martial arts very much, so she held deep admiration for Gu Ning after watching videos of her saving people. Therefore, she was one of Gu Ning's loyal fans now. She never missed a piece of news about Gu Ning and had also watched the video of the opening ceremony of Jade Beauty Jewelry. She had noticed Gu Man standing by Gu Ning's side the entire time, so she believed that Gu Man must be Gu Ning's mother given their similar faces. Gu Man felt a little uneasy when Zhuang Tianman stared straight at her with a pair of bright eyes. "Yeah. It's so nice to meet you. My name's Zhuang Tianman, and I'm a big fan of Gu Ning." Zhuang Tianman was more excited now. Nevertheless, she didn't forget her job and asked with concern in an instant, "May I help?" Zhuang Tianman changed her tone so fast, it surprised Gu Man, so Xiaoya opened her mouth at this time. "We came here to report a case." Hearing that, Zhuang Tianman put on a serious face. "Please follow me." After that, they followed Zhuang Tianman inside. Hearing what had happened to Lin Lijuan, Zhuang Tianman was in a rage. She couldn't wait a second longer to catch the rapist and throw him in jail for the rest of his life. Since they were Gu Ning's relatives, Zhuang Tianman recorded their account and filed it. She also reported it to Liang Yobua, who was the director of Public Security Bureau, after walking Gu Man's group out. Liang Yobua, of course, took it very seriously and sent out a group of policemen to investigate it. Xiaoya sent Gu Qingxiang and Lin Lijuan home, then took a taxi to the beauty salon along with Gu Man. In City B, the president of technology company G of Country Y arrived at 1:50 p.m. along with his subordinates. Although technology company G was the leading company in the technology industry, it was barely comparable to Tanghuang Group in regards to its assets and social status. Therefore, they came to visit Tanghuang Group in person, including their president. The president of technology company G was a man who was around 30 years old. He had curly hair with delicate features and a pair of ocean blue eyes. He was a born princess. If Gu Ning was here, she would recognize the man, because the president of technology company G was actually Alan. "Mr. Alan, nice to meet you." Quan Mingkai welcomed him in person. "Nice to meet you too, Secretary Quan," Alan said politely. Although there was a problem with their cooperation, they wouldn't end the deal before they found solid proof, even though they already distrusted each other. Quan Mingkai guided Alan's group to the meeting room afterwards. It was almost 2 p.m. when they walked inside, and every director of Tanghuang Group was present. When the meeting was about to start, Alan was slightly displeased that Tang Yunfan was still absent. "May I ask why the chairman of Tanghuang is absent right now? Can you make the decision without him?" "Mr. Allen, I'm very sorry that our chairman can't attend today's meeting, but it won't affect the result," Quan Mingkai said. "Great, then let's begin," Allen said. After that, they began to talk about the problem. Allen's group said that none of them had leaked the proposal. Quan Mingkai's group also said that they found that nobody in their team had leaked it after investigation. However, it was obvious that someone among them must have leaked the proposal, so none of them believe each other's statement. If they couldn't have a result, both sides would suffer a great loss. The source of this content n/o/v/l by n. "Well, I received a video a few days ago, and I wonder whether you're interested to see it," Alan said all of a sudden, and his secretary took out a USB flash disk at once. Hearing that, others were all surprised and had a bad premonition. Was the video the evidence? Quan Mingkai, Tang Yinhang and Tang Yinrong weren't very surprised, because they had guessed all the possibilities, and one of which was that technology company G would come with evidence. In that case, they were prepared to pay them compensation. Although it was a trap set by Tang Deming, they still had to take responsibility and take disciplinary action against the person who had leaked the proposal afterwards. Quan Mingkai took the USB flash disk with a calm face, then opened it. However, the video wasn't the evidence they thought it would be, but the introduction of a piece of land. Everyone was struck dumb for a few seconds, then turned to look at Alan with confusion. What did he mean? Tang Deming, on the other hand, couldn't believe his eyes. What's going on here? Shouldn't it be a video of an employee of Tang Huang Group making a deal with a person working in technology company E? Why has it been replaced? Quan Mingkai was also surprised to see the land in the video, but he was familiar with it. Alan noticed their confusion, and said, "This is a great piece of land, and many real estate companies of Country Y are competing for it. Luckily, I succeeded in acquiring it in the end. I plan to build an exclusive private clubhouse and a resort on it, but my company can't afford the expenses. I admire Tang Huang's ability, so I hope that we can work together to develop the land and share the profits 50-50. What do you think?" What? Everyone was shocked again. They hadn't dealt with the problem of the leak of the proposal yet, and Alan wanted to cooperate with Tang Huang again right now? "Mr. Allen, shouldn't we deal with the leak problem first?" Tang Deming asked in annoyance. They had made a deal beforehand. Why did Alan suddenly change his mind? He wasn't afraid of the investigation because he wasn't involved in it in person, but he was mad at the opposite result. "It's not me who isn't willing to deal with the leak problem, but neither of us can find evidence. What can we do now? No matter who leaked the proposal, the company should pay compensation. Tang Huang can afford it, but I can't, so I need to make money first," Alan said. After a second, he added, "Although the leak problem has affected our relationship, I don't think that we can't cooperate again. I appreciate Tang Huang's influence and ability, so there is no reason for me to stop cooperating with Tang Huang. In addition, there is nothing that should be kept a secret in this deal, and it's a win-win, so why don't we have a try?" Tang Deming was struck dumb with anger. It was obvious that Alan changed his mind, and it was useless for him to say anything further. Therefore, Tang Deming had to close his mouth, although he was reluctant to accept it. "I agree. Although it wasn't a pleasant cooperation in regards to the security system, we can still work with each other to make money," Quan Mingkai said happily. Given Alan's previous attitude, Quan Mingkai believed that Alan must have made a secret deal with Tang Deming's group. Even though Quan Mingkai was also confused by his sudden change, there was no reason for Quan Mingkai to decline this project which Alan sent them in person. "All right, we can keep on investigating the leak problem, and I hope that we can communicate with each other more. As long as we trust each other as usual, we can continue to work together. Well, I think it's time for dinner, and I prefer to discuss business by a dining table. Would you mind inviting us to share a meal together?" Alan asked, and didn't feel that there was anything wrong with it. Tang Huang Group agreed to cooperate with them, but they still needed to discuss many details before signing the contract. "Of course not," Quan Mingkai said. Even if Alan didn't say it himself, Quan Mingkai would invite him to dine together as well. "Would you mind sharing dinner with us at 5:30 p.m. at the hotel where you stay?" Alan stayed in the Huangdang Hotel, which was owned by Tang Huang Group, and Quan Mingkai had booked rooms for them. "Sure, why not?" Alan said. After that, the meeting was over, and Quan Mingkai walked Alan's group out. They used to think that it would be a major difficulty, but to their astonishment it was easily solved. When Tang Deming was back in his office, he called Tang Weiyong without delay. The plan failed. What? Failed? Tang Weiyong was shocked. What happened? Tang Deming then told Tang Weiyong everything, which annoyed Tang Weiyong. How could he change his mind and even propose to work with Tang Huang on such a big project? "What should we do next?" Tang Deming asked. "I'll call you when I have an idea," Tang Weiyong said. "Sure," Tang Deming said. Quan Mingkai didn't walk back to the company until Alan's group got in their cars. Alan also made a call once he was seated in the car. "Vi sit en velben, cm for EU ovals. Miss Gu, It's already done, and I'll meet you at the dinner, Alan said in his gentle voice the second someone answered his call. Thanks, Gu Ning said. The person who answered Alan's call was exactly Gu Ning. At noon, Kay failed to find anything useful after hacking into technology company E's and technology company G's databases, so Gu Ning told him to find out who the boss of technology company G was. Gu Ning planned to find a clue from its boss, but she was surprised to discover that the boss of technology company G was Alan. Therefore, Gu Ning called Bai Shuiyan for Alan's number, then called Alan at once. Gu Ning and Alan weren't very familiar actually, but they had met each other a few times, so she thought that Alan might be willing to help her. Alan, hi. This is Gu Ning said when Alan answered her call. Miss Gu, I'm surprised to receive your call. Alan was telling the truth, because they didn't stay in touch although they had met before. Alan, please accept my apology first, because I've done an investigation of your company without your permission. I asked Shuiyan for your number after I found out that you're the boss of technology company G, Gu Ning said. The thing is, I have a close relationship with Tanghuang Group and I have already heard the terrible news about the leak problem. Although I don't know which company has leaked the information, but I think that it's very likely to be a scheme against Tanghuang Group. Alan was surprised to hear that Gu Ning had a close relationship with Tanghuang Group, and that the leak problem was a part of a scheme against it. Since Gu Ning was closely related to Tanghuang Group, it wasn't a big deal that she was aware of the leak problem. Alan wasn't annoyed at her for doing a secret investigation of technology company G either. In addition, Alan also believed that it could be a scheme against Tanghuang Group. Although he wasn't familiar with Gu Ning and had only met her a few times, he appreciated Gu Ning very much and preferred to work with Gu Ning instead of the person who laid this trap for Tanghuang Group. Miss Gu, since you side with Tanghuang Group, I'm willing to help. A technical staff member of Tanghuang Group met the supervisor of technology company E in private. Someone turned to my older brother for cooperation with the video of their meeting, so I'm sure that someone working for Tanghuang Group has leaked the proposal. Like what you've told me, it is a scheme, but I think that Tanghuang Group should still pay us the compensation for our loss, Alan said. Of course we should, Gu Ning said. The person said that the chairman of Tanghuang Group was caught in a car accident and is still unconscious, so they wanted to seize this chance to elect a new chairman, Alan added. It's true, but it doesn't mean that the Tang family can't run the business well even though the chairman of Tanghuang Group is unconscious right now. Gu Ning didn't tell Alan that Tang Yunfan was actually fine. Alan had watched videos about Gu Ning on the internet, and he knew that this girl wasn't simple, so he had no intention to act against her. In that case, he came to an agreement with Gu Ning and dropped the leak problem at the meeting. Moreover, he also had a project which lacked investment right now, and Tanghuang Group was the best choice he could find in every aspect. Even if Gu Ning didn't call him, he wouldn't ruin the relationship with Tanghuang Group. That was also the reason why he went to visit Tanghuang Group in person. He was in Germany when the leak problem arose, and it was his older brother who was managing technology company G in country Y. If someone hadn't told him about his older brother's inappropriate behavior, he wouldn't have known either. Afterwards, he flew to country Y and stopped his older brother from taking the next step. If his older brother, instead of him, had visited Tanghuang Group, it would have caused a bad result at the meeting. When Gu Ning called Alan, she had already left the hospital, so neither Tang Haifeng nor Tang Yinhong's group was aware of it. Gu Ning decided to tell them at dinner. Gu Ning went to look for shops for Colane and Cozy this afternoon with Leng Xiaoting. Before that, Leng Xiaoting had already told someone to help them find suitable shops. Although Ning Changkai was completely in charge of the medical company now, it didn't mean that Gu Ning would do nothing. Ning Changkai was in the capital, so Gu Ning would deal with the branches in City B. Visit novelbin.c.m for updates. On the way, Gu Ning called Ning Changkai and asked him how everything was going in the capital. Ning Changkai told her that everything was fine, and that both Colleen and Cozy were quite popular. The majority of their customers were very satisfied with the effects of their medicines and skincare products. In addition, Ning Changkai had signed deals with several businessmen, and there were other businessmen who had the intention to cooperate with them. Colleen and Cozy became very successful within such a short time, and Ning Changkai was in the best mood ever these days. Gu Ning told Ning Changkai to keep on producing medicines and skincare products, and to supervise the production to make sure that they were of high quality. However, before Gu Ning hung up the call with Ning Changkai, a woman came to the store and claimed that Cozy facial masks had caused a rash on her face. Hearing the woman's voice through the phone, Gu Ning told Ning Changkai not to hang up for now, because she wanted to learn more about in Cozy's store in the capital. It was a middle-aged woman who had a rash on her face. She dressed like a rich person, so it couldn't be blackmail, but was a trap. How could you sell harmful skincare products to me? Look at my face now. My face was fine before I used your facial mask, but now it's covered in a rash, the woman shouted in anger in case others couldn't hear her. Hearing her voice, many people in the store surrounded her, but few of them believed her words, because Cozy had a good reputation among customers. It was possible that Cozy's skincare products weren't suitable for her skin. Even the famous international brands weren't suitable for everyone after all. Moreover, most people were fine after using Cozy. Ma'am, are you sure that it's Cozy's facial mask which caused the rash on your face? Ning Changkai asked with a serious face. If not, I wouldn't come here. The woman seemed very mad. Are you sure you didn't use any other skincare products from other brands? Ning Changkai asked a guy.n. Of course not, the woman said with certainty. Well, I think it's very easy to find out whether it's Cozy facial mask, which caused the rash on your face. Please try a piece of Cozy facial mask right here right now to see its effect. If your face doesn't get better, it proves that the problem is our facial mask, but your accusation won't stand if your face gets better. Ning Changkai stared straight at her with a serious face. Hearing that, a touch of panic flashed by the woman's eyes, but she still argued. What if my face gets worse or is even disfigured by your facial mask? Then we'll do whatever you want, Ning Changkai said with confidence, because he believed that there was nothing wrong with Cozy's skincare products. The woman didn't expect that Ning Changkai would be so confident, and she felt slightly regretful now. However, upon thinking of what the person behind her back had said to her, she couldn't retreat. What if you deny your promise? We can turn to the police or a lawyer for help, Ning Changkai replied. Well, the woman panicked a little right now. Ma'am, we're running our business according to the law. If there are any problems with our skincare products, we'll solve them and pay the compensation, but Ning Changkai said the above words in a polite tone, but suddenly became very aggressive. If you're just lying or slandering us, it may damage the reputation of Cozy, and we can sue you. Hearing that, the woman was scared, because she thought that it wasn't a big deal, but it turned out that she could be taken to court. Well, she was in a great panic. People around her all noticed her unusual reaction. Ma'am, are you still sure that it's Cozy's facial mask, which caused the rash on your face? It's about the reputation of Cozy, and we won't take it lightly, Ning Changkai said. He gave the woman a chance to retreat. Well, I think that maybe I'm wrong. I remember that I've eaten a mango. Maybe I'm allergic to it, the woman said at once. Oh, she's allergic to mangoes. I thought that she really got a rash after using Cozy's facial mask. I think that she did it on purpose, and she changed her words because she's afraid that manager Ning might sue her. Updates tnvel/buy.com. I agree. They weren't idiots, and the woman used a dirty trick. The woman felt utterly embarrassed right now. To her astonishment, her real purpose was easily exposed right in front of everyone's eyes. After that, the woman walked out in silence. Ning Changkai let her go because she failed to damage the reputation of Cozy. Cozy built its good reputation on skincare products of high quality, so he wasn't afraid that the woman could succeed. I think peers must be jealous of Cozy because it's very popular and profitable. It's such a dirty trick. Well, business is really a battlefield without smoke. Boss, I let her go, Ning Changkai said to Gu Ning on the phone. Great, you've done a great job, Gu Ning said. Although you're in complete control of the company now, feel free to let me know if you encounter any problems that you can't solve. Sure, boss. Ning Changkai understood Gu Ning's outstanding ability very well, so he wouldn't hesitate to turn to her for help if he ran into any tricky problems. I'm going to open a branch in City B, and I'll let you take it over after I acquire a suitable shop, Gu Ning said. No problem, Ning Changkai said. They planned to open 1 or 2 branches in every big city first before they expanded the business around the country. It wasn't uncommon that a brand owned dozens or even hundreds of branches in a city. A city was normally very large after all, and most people stayed in the same place throughout their lifetime. No matter how famous the brand was, it's impossible that everyone around the country would have heard of it. In addition, nobody was willing to buy a product which was far from where he or she lived. However, Gu Ning wouldn't open branches everywhere, and around 20 branches in City B were enough. 20 branches in City B weren't many, but they decided to work with different big pharmacies and beauty shops so that they could put Colane medicines along with Cozy skincare products on their shelves, which was also an important way to sell their products. Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting checked several shops, and Gu Ning bought one of them which she was the most satisfied with. Although the shops were all of high standard, Gu Ning couldn't buy all of them at a time. It wasn't a good thing to expand her business at a rapid pace. Instead, Gu Ning was determined to do it at a steady pace. Afterwards, they left for the Huangdang Hotel when it was almost 5 p.m. Around 5:10 p.m., Quan Mingkai and Tang Jilin booked a private room at the Huangdang Hotel before they called Alan's secretary. Alan and his secretary along with another 4 people who were in charge of the security system arrived at the private room 10 minutes later. Quan Mingkai stood up to welcome them at once. Mr. Alan, please have a seat. When they were all seated, Quan Mingkai gave Alan the menu. Mr. Alan, please order whatever you like. Alan was a foreigner, so his taste in food was different from them. Well, we don't need to rush. I have a friend who is coming here later, so we can wait for her, Alan said. Sure, Quan Mingkai said, but didn't ask him who his friend was. Afterwards, they chatted casually for a while. When it was almost 5:40 p.m., Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting arrived. They were a little late because of a traffic jam on the road. Quan Mingkai was more than astonished to see Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting. What? He abruptly stood up from his seat. Quan Mingkai wanted to ask something, but didn't know how. It was obvious that Alan's friend was Gu Ning. Miss Gu, nice to see you. Been a while. Alan also stood up to welcome them. Nice to see you too, Alan. Gu Ning shook hands with him. Although they just shook hands with each other out of politeness, Leng Xiaoting was still displeased to see it. Let alone Gu Ning, even Alan felt Leng Xiaoting's dissatisfaction towards him. Alan was confused, because he thought that there was nothing unpleasant which had happened between them. However, when his hands let go of Gu Ning's, Leng Xiaoting's unkind look was gone as well. Alan realized that this young handsome man was just being jealous of him. Alan was amused, but didn't mind it. Gu Ning, however, felt a little embarrassed by her jealous boyfriend. After that, Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting sat by Quan Mingkai's side. Hi, Uncle Quan, Gu Ning called him. What's going on here? Quan Mingkai seemed to understand something, but he wasn't sure. "Please have a seat, everyone," Gu Ning said, and the others all sat down again. Gu Ning then told Quan Mingkai everything. "Oh, I understand," Quan Mingkai said after hearing Gu Ning's explanation. "I was very confused about why Mr. Allen suddenly changed his mind. And now he had the answer. However, they still needed to pay the compensation. Mr. Allen, I'm so sorry for your loss, and we'll pay the compensation," Quan Mingkai said to Allen. "Nobody wanted it to happen, and I do have sympathy for what your company has been through, but we'll take the compensation without a doubt," Allen said. His company couldn't afford the loss. La test novls on n velby/.co. Allen then gave the video to Quan Mingkai. After watching the video, Quan Mingkai recognized the person who had a secret meeting with technology company E. He was a technical staff member working for Time Technology, which was owned by Tanghuang Group. Quan Mingkai was sharing dinner with Allen, so Yan Weiluan would deal with it. In the following hour, they enjoyed the meal together and discussed the new project. After dinner, they signed the contract before leaving. Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting went to the hospital later. Just when Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting were leaving for the hospital, Gu Man, Gu Qing and Xiaoya also walked out of a restaurant at the same time. They had dined on Yui Road, which wasn't far from their home, so they went back home on foot. "Well, although I hate Lin Lijuan, I still feel sorry for her now," Gu Qing said. "Yeah," Gu Man sighed. "I hope that she'll never remember the terrible experience for the rest of her life. I don't think that she can accept it." "You're right," Gu Qing said. The part of the road wasn't located downtown, so there weren't many people. When they walked to a road section with the fewest people, 3 men rushed at them all of a sudden and surrounded them. Xiaoya protected Gu Man and Gu Qing behind her back at once. She coldly looked at them and didn't seem scared at all. Although Gu Man and Gu Qing were frightened, they knew that Xiaoya wasn't an ordinary girl, so they were soon relaxed. "It's fine," Xiaoya said to comfort Gu Qing and Gu Man. Hearing that, they were relieved. "Gu Man stays and we can let the other 2 leave," a man said. "Impossible," Xiaoya sneered. She didn't bother to talk with them and attacked them without delay. The 3 men were all beaten down by Xiaoya within seconds. The 3 men knew some fighting skills and could easily get control of 3 ordinary women. However, they ran into Xiaoya, who was an experienced killer today. In Xiaoya's eyes, they were merely kids. Even though Gu Qing and Gu Man knew that Xiaoya was very good at martial arts, they were still shocked to see the scene. Xiaoya was so amazing. The 3 men, on the other hand, were struck dumb by the result. Xiaoya questioned them about who sent them, and under Xiaoya's threats they revealed that the person who sent them was Feng Shuiqin. Therefore, Xiaoya called Gu Ning and told her about what just happened. Gu Ning wasn't surprised, because she sent Xiaoya to protect Gu Man precisely because she knew that Feng Shuiqin would take action to hurt Gu Man sooner or later, but she was still mad. Feng Shuiqin, very well. Gu Ning decided to pay her back this time. However, she still needed to go to the hospital first. When Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting arrived, Tang Yunhang and Tang Yunrong were in the ward. Both of them were still confused about why Allen had suddenly changed his mind. They didn't know the reason until Gu Ning told them. "I think they'll either stop scheming against Tanghuang for a while or take full-scale action," Gu Ning said. "The latter is more possible in my eyes, because it's better to do it sooner rather than later. They have no idea when my father and grandpa will wake up after all. If they took action after Tang Yunfan and Tang Haifeng woke up, it would be much more difficult." Hearing Gu Ning's opinion, they all agreed and stayed alert. Before long, Tang Yunhang received Yan Weiluan's call and got to know that the person who had leaked the proposal had gone abroad to Country M yesterday morning. Country M was a very large country, and it was very hard for them to find out where he was. However, even though it was very hard, they still needed to chase him, because he was the assistant of the mastermind behind the scheme. Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting left the hospital around 9 p.m., but they didn't go home after that. Instead, they went to find Feng Shuiqin. Before they came to the hospital, Gu Ning told Kay to find Feng Shuiqin's phone number and hack into her phone to see her location. Luckily, Feng Shuiqin's phone was connected to the internet, so Kay easily got her specific location. Right now, Feng Shuiqin was having fun in the Earth nightclub, but it would take them some time to find out which private room and floor she was on. In case Leng Xiaoting had conflict with Qi Tianlin if they ran into each other, Gu Ning told him to wait for her in the underground parking lot. Although it was likely that they wouldn't meet one another, Gu Ning did it to avoid conflict. There was a long-standing grudge between Leng Xiaoting and Qi Tianlin after all, and there could be great trouble given Qi Tianlin's temper. Gu Ning wasn't afraid of Qi Tianlin at all, but she was unwilling to cause trouble. Leng Xiaoting was dissatisfied. "I'm not scared of having conflict against him." "I know, but I don't want to cause trouble, all right?" Gu Ning said. Since Gu Ning said so, Leng Xiaoting gave up. Gu Ning didn't know what to say after seeing Leng Xiaoting being displeased, so she kissed him to comfort him. However, Leng Xiaoting took the initiative at once and pressed on her body for more. The longer he kissed her, the more he wanted. If they hadn't been in a public place, Leng Xiaoting would have undressed her in a minute, but he was determined to punish her tonight. He didn't let Gu Ning go until she was out of breath. Gu Ning flushed, which was very attractive in Leng Xiaoting's eyes. In case Leng Xiaoting pressed on her again, Gu Ning got out of the car in a hurry. A short while after Gu Ning was gone, Leng Xiaoting caught sight of a man walking out of an elevator. He squinted at him. To his surprise, he saw this man, who was always mysterious, right here. Without delay, Leng Xiaoting sent Gu Ning a message and told her that he had to leave to deal with something and she could go back home on her own if she didn't receive his message or call by the time she was done. Gu Ning understood that it must be something important, so she told him to be careful. Gu Ning didn't turn to Qi Tianlin for help, but searched the floors by herself. She assumed that Feng Shuiqin would be on the floor of KTV rooms, so she checked the rooms one by one. She had jade eyes after all, so it wasn't difficult. KTV rooms were on the 3rd and 4th floor. Gu Ning went to the 3rd floor and used her jade eyes. She was able to see the inside of the rooms on this floor and the 4th floor at the same time. In the private rooms, there were different kinds of people doing different things, like singing, drinking, playing games, or even having sex. It was an entertainment place controlled by a gang, so there were many dirty deals being settled here. Although sex trade was illegal in this country, and the government had strict rules and control over it in the big cities, it still existed in the darkness. The government was also unwilling to mess with gangs, so sometimes it turned a blind eye to it. As long as they didn't cause too much trouble, the government wouldn't investigate their clubhouses, which was also the reason why those clubhouses controlled by gangs were more popular than other legal entertainment places. When Gu Ning had walked halfway, she found Feng Shuiqin in number 555 private room on the 4th floor. There were 6 people in the private room. 3 were men, while the other 3 were women. One of the women was Wu Jini. Since she had already found Feng Shuiqin, Gu Ning decided to meet her right away. However, when the elevator which was coming down from the 4th floor stopped at the 3rd floor, Gu Ning met Qi Tianlin's eyes the second the door opened, and both of them were surprised. There were only Qi Tianlin and his 2 security guards who were Yu Hao and Qinghua in the elevator. Yu Hao and Qinghua recognized Gu Ning, and they also knew that this girl had a relationship with their boss, so they were kind to her. "Why are you here?" Qi Tianlin frowned with dissatisfaction. CHCK for US to rise on no/v/l/bin. C0M. He had been waiting for Gu Ning to gamble with him, but she never called him after a long time. However, now he caught her having fun here. Gu Ning stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the 4th floor. I'm here to take revenge. Take revenge? Chi Tianlin cocked his eyebrow. Does it mean that you're going to cause trouble here? Gu Ning frowned, because she didn't know how to answer that question. It was unavoidable that she might cause noise or even damage here, but she couldn't say that to Chi Tianlian's face, which would be a direct challenge to his power. Therefore, Gu Ning said, I can drag her out first. Saying that, they arrived at the 4th floor. Well, why don't you come to the gambling room after your revenge? I can help you deal with the mess afterwards. How about that? Chi Tianlin asked in a domineering tone. Great. Since Lin Xiaoting left to deal with his thing, and she was free now anyway, she could gamble with Chi Tianlin as she had promised. Yu Hao, go with her, Chi Tianlin made an order. Yes, boss, Yu Hao said. There was a waiter standing outside each private room, so others had to have permission from the people in the room after the waiter pressed the bell before they walked in. Well, truckers, that's all for this part. See you all in the next video.